Chapter 756. They probably don't want to believe the truth and want to continue searching for Chu Liuyue's traces. Sheng Guanwan said nonchalantly, but her eyes were filled with disdain and mockery. Jiang Yuqing saw her expression, and a tinge of impatience and disgust rose in his heart. His expression also became much colder as he looked at Mu Qinghe. They came together after all. How can we leave them behind alone? Go and call them back. Mu Qinghe's brows moved slightly, and a tinge of surprise flashed across her eyes. Jiang Yuqing doesn't seem to have a good relationship with Chongshu Pavilion. Why is he concerned about the lives of our disciples at this time? This really doesn't match his usual style of doing things. As she was too shocked, Mu Qinghe paused for a moment before nodding. The last general will? Why do you care about them? Sheng Guanwan suddenly spoke and interrupted Mu Qinghe. As if realizing that her words were a little inappropriate, her expression changed slightly as she coughed and added a few more sentences. Oh, what I mean is that their hearts and minds are filled with finding Chu Liyue. It's useless for anyone to persuade them. They might even end up being blamed in the end. Even though they came together, this is what they want to do. Outsiders have no right to interfere, right? She looked at Jiang Yuqing meaningfully and seemingly smiled. Yuqing, I know you have good intentions, but sometimes good intentions often lead to bad things. Anyway, with Qin Yi and Lei Laosi around, nothing will happen to them. They might even want to follow Qin Yi and Lei Laosi. But in this Dahuang swamp, it's really dangerous for a few people to be alone. Jiang Yuqing knitted his brows. Why don't we send a portion of the Black Cavalry and go together with them? Together with what? Sheng Guanwan cut him off as if she was joking. Yuqing, don't tell me you want to find Chu Liyue too? We know you. We know you're doing this for their own good. But in the eyes of those who don't know what's going on, that might not necessarily be the case. You don't want to be misunderstood, do you? The fire in Jiang Yuqing's chest arched, and he finally suppressed it with great difficulty. I got it. What you said makes sense. Just let them be. Only then did Sheng Guanwan stop and lower her eyes. However, the bottom of her heart was not so calm. She had deliberately mentioned Chu Liyue just now to test him. She could clearly see the panic in Jiang Yuqing's eyes for a moment. Why was he panicking? Sheng Guanwan walked forward step by step, but her body was tense and her hands were tightly clenched. Her face was covered with a veil, and there were scars on her face, so it was not easy for others to see her expression. However, the aura around her was extremely cold. She had long suspected that Jiang Yuqing had feelings for Chu Liyue, and now it seemed that it was true. If it were someone else, he would definitely not say a word. Was it just because of the somewhat similar eyebrows? Sheng Guanwan was unconvinced and unwilling to accept it. Although the two of them had killed Sheng Guanyu together, she knew that many years ago Jiang Yuqing did indeed like Sheng Haiyu. However, for some reason, it seemed that his attitude toward Sheng Haiyu changed overnight. Until now she still did not know why. She had never asked. Jiang Yuqing also liked her, but this kind of like was different from the kind of like he used to like Sheng Haiyu. She knew that once she asked, many things would be different. She was not that stupid. Besides, Sheng Haiyu was dead after all. What was the point of arguing with a dead person? However, this time Jiang Yuqing felt that familiar uneasiness toward Chu Liyue. Sheng Guanwan glanced at Jiang Yuqing. He fell into deep thought again. No one knew what he was thinking. Along the way he had lost count of how many times he had been like this. The people who could make him feel this way were Sheng Haiyu and Chu Liyue. Sheng Guanwan wanted to flare up, but she suppressed it. In the end, both of them were dead. Just like that, Sheng Guanwan secretly comforted herself for a long time before she finally calmed down. However, Jiang Yuqing, who was next to her, did not notice it at all. Or perhaps he noticed it but he was too lazy to care. The two of them walked forward together, but they had different thoughts and did not speak. A few hours later they finally walked out of the mystic forest and arrived at the border of Mirror Lake. Mirror Lake is up ahead. Mu Qinghe said in a low voice. Sheng Guanwan perked up and looked forward. At this time the sun was setting in the west. At the border where the water met the sky, large patches of clouds floated. Light pierced through the clouds and dyed half the sky a brilliant gold. Below, Mirror Lake was boundless, reflecting the scenery in the sky. At first glance it looked like a huge mirror on the ground. Everyone quieted down. Such a scene could be considered as a paradise on earth. I didn't expect the scenery of Mirror Lake to be so beautiful. Yeah. Just one look and I'm mesmerized. This is the most beautiful place I've seen in my life. It looks calm and peaceful. It doesn't seem as scary as the rumors say. Many disciples walked forward and looked at the scenery with intoxicated expressions. They praised it one after another. Compared to the purgatory-like mystic forest, this place was many times better. However, while they were immersed in the moving scenery of Mirror Lake, many of the Black Cavalry members looked tense. He seemed to be very nervous. Even Mu Qinghe was no exception. Your Highness, First Young Master, Mirror Lake looks peaceful, but it's actually as dangerous as the Mystic Forest. It's better to be careful. He originally wanted to say that Mirror Lake was more dangerous than the Mystic Forest, but after considering what happened in the Mystic Forest, he decided to put the two on the same level. Of the 3 places in Dahuang Swamp, this is the place with the highest number of deaths. Mu Qinghe's words made everyone quiet down. Many of the sect disciples who had previously yearned for the Mirror Lake were stunned when they heard this. They looked at each other in dismay. Sheng Guanwan was also surprised. Really? But Mirror Lake doesn't look like anything. Wait, what's that? Everyone followed her line of sight. In the middle of Mirror Lake, there was a flower breaking out of the water and rising slowly. It was a palm-sized flower with a total of 5 petals that were pink and white in color. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, it looked translucent. It looked magnificent and beautiful. When the breeze blew, it swayed gently. Elder Qiushi suddenly widened his eyes in shock. Isn't that the dancing lotus? Sheng Guanwan was pleasantly surprised. Elder Qiushi, are you sure that's the dancing lotus? It was rumored to be a top-grade medicinal herb that could revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. The dancing lotus. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 757. I've only seen it in ancient books, but looking at its appearance it should be close to the mark. Elder Qiushi was also very excited and his face flushed. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, there might not be such a rare treasure. Rumor has it that the dancing lotus takes 100 years to germinate, 100 years to grow branches, and 300 years to bloom. However, its flowering period was only a short 5 years. If no one plucked it within 5 years, the dancing lotus flower would fall and bear fruit again, entering another 500-year cycle. Currently, this dancing lotus flower was in its flowering period. Elder Qiushi's eyes lit up. Your Highness, we've really come to the right place this time. As long as we have this dancing lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve. Although the few herbs that they planned to find previously were also considered treasures, compared to this dancing lotus, they were many levels apart. Sheng Guanwan was also very happy. This time, she came to Dahuang Swamp in the name of finding herbs for her father. The only mythical beast had already died with Chu Luiyue. It would probably be difficult to meet another one. However, as long as they had this dancing lotus, they didn't need to find any other herbs. It would definitely be perfect to bring it back. It must be the 3rd princess's filial piety that allowed us to encounter this dancing lotus. Elder Qiushi sighed and didn't forget to flatter her. As expected, Sheng Guanwan's mood became better after hearing that. What? It's clearly because father is the emperor and is blessed with good fortune. I can only see this dancing lotus because of fate. With this dancing lotus, she only needed to take a small portion, and she might be able to heal all the injuries on her face and body. Thinking of this, Sheng Guanwan yearned for it even more, and she was about to move forward. However, just as she took half a step, she recalled what Mu Qinghe said just now. This Mirror Lake doesn't seem to be an ordinary dangerous place? She looked at Mu Qinghe. Vice Admiral Mu, you know this Mirror Lake the best. I wonder if you have a way to get that dancing lotus? After Sheng Guanwan and the rest left with the large group, Mu Hongyu and the rest were left behind. After confirming that there was no one else around, Lei Laosi finally spoke. Big brother, do you have a way to find her? His expression was nervous and worried, and there was a trace of fear in the depths of his eyes. He was really worried that something would happen to His Highness. Even with the crimson gold-red phoenix, she was only a rank 5 warrior. If she encountered great danger, after all, even he was shocked by the power that was faintly spreading from the mother tree. Qin Yi furrowed his brows slightly as he looked at the mother tree and narrowed his eyes. She should be down here, but none of us should be able to enter at the moment. As soon as he finished speaking, a look of despair appeared on their faces. Even young Master Qin can't do it? Yi Ranran asked softly with reddened eyes. Qin Yi was the strongest among them. If he said that he couldn't do it, then Qin Yi sighed and looked at Chang Wanzhou. Do you know how she is now? Chang Wanzhou pressed his lips tightly together and shook his head. He was more sensitive than the average person. In addition, the Cloud Sky Copper Sword was personally made by him, so he could usually determine her position more quickly and accurately and know if she was dead or alive. However, he couldn't do more than that. Also, as Qin Yi said, there was indeed a force below that blocked everything outside, so they couldn't detect any movement at all. At this point, there was basically only a quarter of the leaves on the mother tree left. Qin glanced at it and suddenly waved his sleeves to set up a barrier. The green barrier instantly enveloped Mu Hongyu and the rest. Compared to the previous barrier he set up, the aura this time was clearly much stronger. Mu Hongyu and the rest looked at each other in shock. Qin Yi's cultivation level seemed to be much stronger than what we imagined. He actually hid his true abilities previously. Laosi, stay here and look after them. I'll be back soon. Lei Laosi immediately said, Big brother, I'll go with you. Qin Yi shook his head. Nobody knew what would happen next, so it was better to be careful. These few people were all friends that Her Highness valued, so he naturally had to protect them well. Lei Laosi could only stay on the spot. Qin Yi walked forward. The withered leaves fell down and landed on his head and body. He raised his hand, picked up a leaf and took a closer look. The originally emerald green leaf rapidly turned yellow and curled up within a few seconds. The energy and vitality contained in it seemed to have been sucked away by something. He knitted his brows and looked forward. A branch suddenly broke and fell from above. Without a doubt, that branch had also completely withered. Qin Yi glanced at it and was about to continue walking forward when he suddenly realized that a dark green glow seemed to have flashed across the spot where the branch broke. He took 2 steps closer and lowered his head to take a look. As expected, there was a faint dark green glow at the spot where the branch broke. His heart skipped a beat, and he waved his hand to cut off a branch. The branch fell at the same spot and in the same scene. Gotcha. At this moment, a cracking sound was heard from the front. Qin Yi immediately looked up and saw that there was actually a crack on the extremely thick tree trunk. That crack was only the thickness of a finger and an inch long. Compared to the entire tree, it wasn't worth mentioning at all. However, very quickly a dark green glow shone out from within. Deep underground in the cave, the glow shone in all directions. The entire space was silent. That's roughly what happened. Chu Liyue calmly explained her situation to Taizu briefly before kneeling down and kowtowing again. I hid a lot of things from Taizu previously, so please forgive me, Taizu. Taizu looked at her deeply, reached out, and gently caressed her hair as he sighed. Child, it's been hard on you. Digression. It's already a lousy February. It should be at 9 p.m., and will continue to be updated. Those who can't wait until tomorrow can also watch it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 758. When Chu Liyue talked about the past previously, she had always been very calm. Although those people and those things were like the sharpest blade, leaving the deepest and most painful scars on her. But now she could face it calmly. His tone was calm and his expression was indifferent, as if he was talking about someone else. However, when Taizu said that sentence, Chu Liyue's nose twitched, and her eyes turned red. Those painful memories could no longer affect her in the slightest. She thought her heart was as hard as a rock. She didn't expect to be so easily defeated by Taizu's words. Although Taizu didn't have a physical body, Chu Liyue couldn't feel his caress. However, she seemed to have been comforted by something in an instant. A hole opened up in the dam that had been built high in her heart, allowing the countless suppressed emotions to surge out like a flood. Chu Liyue closed her eyes and a hot tear fell silently. After a while, she raised her head and smiled at Taizu. Taizu's words were enough for Luyu. Taizu looked at the girl in front of him, his eyes full of pity. When he saw Chu Liyue perform the 3rd level of the Lingxiao palm, countless conjectures flashed through his mind. But he still didn't expect her experience to be so rough and strange. He sighed and shook his head, and a trace of anger flashed across his face. I didn't expect that there would be such a despicable person in the Shangguan family. Shangguan really doesn't deserve this name. He didn't take Shangguan seriously before. He just felt that this junior was not generous enough and seemed to be quite scheming, so he didn't like her very much. But he didn't expect that she would do such a thing as killing her own clan and deceiving her superiors and subordinates. In order to get everything she wanted, she was really crazy. If the Tianling dynasty is really handed over to her, I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable. Perhaps the 1,000-year foundation of the Tianling dynasty will be destroyed in Shangguan's hands. Chu Liyue said word by word, Taizu, don't worry. Don't worry, ancestor. With Liyue around, I definitely won't let her have her way. She will eventually pay the price for everything she has done. Taizu looked at Chu Liyue with a relieved expression. Fortunately, in the Shangguan family besides her, there's still a good child like you, Luyu. Suddenly thinking of something, the great ancestor suddenly laughed and said, No wonder I felt very close to you when I saw you. We are family. Back then, after he left the Tianling God realm with Chu Luiyue, he was very curious about everything about the Tianling royal family. When Chu Luiyue went to the palace to see Shang Guanwan, he had secretly tried to look at Shang Guanwan. In the end, he was greatly disappointed. In comparison, he still liked Chu Luiyue more, so he had always been by her side. He gradually lost interest in the Tianling royal family. After going one round, it turned out that Chu Luiyue was a member of the Shangguan family. Chu Luiyue blinked. Taizu, it's good that you don't blame me. You don't know, but when you agreed to give me the Long Yuan sword, I almost wanted to confess to you. But the situation was urgent and I didn't want to implicate you, so I didn't say it in the end. Please don't take offense. Taizu snorted. You are Shangguan Jing's junior. What can't you say? If I had known that Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing had bullied you to this extent, I definitely wouldn't have let them off. His brows furrowed slightly. I don't even have enough time to feel sorry for you. How can I bear to blame you? Chu Luiyue's heart warmed. The feeling of someone standing on the same side as her, unconditionally believing and supporting her and willing to stand up for her, it was too beautiful and precious. The former Shangguan Yu had lost everything and only her father was left. Furthermore, he had been poisoned and fell into a coma. Until today, it was difficult for her to even see him once. And now, Chu Luiyue had elders who doted on her and trusted friends. There was also Rong Xiu, who would always place her at the top of his heart. Back then, I was willing to give you the Long Yuan sword for 2 reasons. Taizu's expression became much more serious. Chu Luiyue subconsciously straightened her back. Firstly, the Long Yuan sword awakened and chose you as its new master. Although it's a Yuan instrument that I refined, it has its own intelligence. You should know that many people from the Tianling dynasty have entered the Tianling God realm over the years to ask for the Long Yuan sword, but they all failed in the end. And when you appeared, the Long Yuan sword reacted very quickly and woke up. It's not just me. It has also waited for 1,000 years for a new master that it likes. Now that it finally chose you, I naturally won't object. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and finally asked the question in her heart. Even so, you spent a lot of effort to refine the Long Yuan sword. You should have wanted to leave it for the Tianling royal family. But at that time you didn't know my identity. Why did you still give it to me so straightforwardly? Chu Luiyue believed that if Taizu wanted to stop her, he would definitely be able to. But he didn't. Instead, he gave the Long Yuan sword to her very generously. Chu Luiyue couldn't figure this out no matter how hard she tried. If it was any other treasure, it would be fine if he gave it to an outsider. But this Long Yuan sword was a symbol of Taizu's identity and also an existence that was like a sacred item of the Tianling dynasty. Its significance was extraordinary. Taizu giving it to her so straightforwardly was really out of her expectations. This is the second point that I want to talk about. Taizu paused for a moment and looked at Chu Luiyue with a complicated gaze. You probably don't know yet, but inside the black pyramid in your body, there seems to be a bloodline power of the Tianling royal family. Digression. A wasted February was dragged to work by Mom. Mobile users, please browse and read at around 9:30 p.m. A better reading experience comes from Ijing. Chapter 759. Once he said that, Chu Luiyue was dazed. She looked at Taizu in a daze. What do you mean by that? Taizu looked into Chu Luiyue's eyes and said firmly. It means that there's the aura of a member of the Tianling royal family hidden inside. According to my guess, it's very likely to be a soul. Chu Luiyue's pupils constricted, and she almost blurted out. How is that possible? It's really very likely. Taizu put his hands behind his back with a solemn expression. If it's just a pure force, what's the point of locking it up like this? Do you still remember the scene when you flew down the crater and entered the space under the Long Yuan sword? Countless images flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. Of course she remembered. Everything that happened that day was still vivid in her mind. Do you know that I specially set up that space? Those who aren't from the Tianling royal family aren't allowed to enter. Taizu's words were like a heavy hammer that smashed Chu Luiyue's head hard. Her eyes suddenly lit up. That's right. When she jumped down the crater, sword aura was everywhere. At the crucial moment, the black pyramid flew out and opened the door, allowing her to enter. Later, a crack appeared on the seal of the black pyramid. At that time, I sensed that the aura inside was extremely familiar. At that time, I thought that the soul of a descendant of the Tianling royal family was sealed inside, so I agreed to give you the Long Yuan sword and leave the Tianling god realm with you. Taizu originally wanted to take the opportunity to attack the Black Pyramid again to see what secrets were hidden inside. In the end, that crack actually repaired itself. The aura inside was isolated again. With his current cultivation level and strength, it was really difficult to break that seal. Therefore he put this matter aside for now. It wasn't until today that he confirmed Chu Liyue's identity that he finally told her everything. Chu Liyue listened bit by bit, and it was as if stormy waves had surged in her heart. She had guessed countless times what was hidden in the Black Pyramid, but she had never thought of this possibility. Are you sure that it's really? Chu Liyue's throat tightened. Taizu nodded. Absolutely. Chu Liyue closed his eyes. Since the Taizu were so certain, then this matter was most likely true. However, this was simply too inconceivable. To tell you the truth, I accidentally obtained this item in country Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum. Originally there was no seal on it, but I met a mysterious person who forcefully sealed it and gave it to me. As Chu Liyue spoke, he stretched out his right hand. The Black Pyramid appeared in her palm. Its surface was dull and pitch black and it looked very ordinary. The crack that had appeared earlier had indeed been repaired. Chu Liyue frowned. If there really was a person's soul inside, then who could it be? The Tianling dynasty had been passed down for thousands of years, and there was no way to find out. What was even stranger was why it would appear in country Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum. Country Yao Chen had existed for much shorter time than the Tianling dynasty, but even so, it was difficult to find the answer. In her impression, none of the ancestors of the Tianling dynasty had been to country Yao Chen. However, history books did not represent the real history. Other than the people involved, no one else would know what had happened. If only we could break this seal, Taizu said. Do you know who set up the seal? Chu Liyue shook her head. I've never seen the other party. I only know that it seems to be a man. That's difficult. If we don't break the seal, we won't be able to determine who the soul inside belongs to. Taizu was a little puzzled. I wonder what the person who did this is after? Chu Liyue stared at the Black Pyramid in her hand and suddenly said, Taizu, I don't think this seal was repaired by itself. It was repaired by the person who set up this seal. Why do you say that? Chu Liyue was silent for a moment and shook her head. This is just my intuition. If that person did it, why did he return this thing to you back then? Couldn't he just keep it for himself? If that person was willing to put in so much effort to set up this barrier, it meant that this thing must be very important to that person. Then why did he spend so much effort to put it in Chu Liyue's hands? Chu Liyue fell into deep thought. Taizu's words were not without reason. If only she had seen the appearance of the great master back then. After thinking for a long time, she still had no clue. In the end, Chu Liyue could only put away the Black Pyramid and put this matter aside. She had a premonition that the great master would definitely come looking for her again. One day she would find out the real secret hidden here. After dealing with all these matters, Chu Liyue sat cross-legged again. She let out a long breath and prepared to cultivate. This time, Taizu did not say anything. He just stood in front of her and silently protected her. Chu Liyue closed her eyes and concentrated. After a period of time, the concentration of heaven and earth energy in the surroundings increased by a lot. It could be seen that in this short period of time, the two Tian baby had swallowed a lot of energy. The water droplet in her dantian began to slowly rotate. The surrounding energy, which was originally flowing towards the two Tian baby, gradually changed direction. Taizu did not notice at first, but when he saw the dark green light around him shake like water waves, he curiously turned around to take a look. He was shocked on the spot by what he saw. Chu Liyue's body was already enveloped by a layer of dark green light. The surrounding energy was pouring into her body. She sat there quietly like a statue, as motionless as a mountain, and quickly absorbed the energy. And the speed was getting faster and faster. The great ancestor was horrified. Chu Liyue, she was actually snatching the energy from the two Tian baby? He originally thought that she was at most recuperating for a while. He did not expect that she was actually planning to cultivate, and the key point was that she did it. The two Tian baby looked like a small bead, but in fact, it was very domineering. The entire mystic forest was under its control. Everything that had happened before was actually its doing. It could quickly devour all the energy in the surrounding space. In the end, it caused the space to completely collapse. Chu Liyue was actually able to snatch energy from it for her own cultivation. Even he might not be able to do it. Moreover, Chu Liyue was only a stage 5 warrior now. Taizu was dumbfounded. Chu Liyue knew nothing about this. In her opinion, she was just absorbing the energy of heaven and earth around her to cultivate. Well, the speed of the water droplet's rotation seemed to be a little faster than before. 5 lines swayed gently on the water droplet. The crystal suddenly swayed and floated towards Chu Liyue. Taizu sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu Luiyue was trying to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. Digression. Another mistake after writing, I almost lost the manuscript. After looking for it for a long time, I'm tired, let's go eat. There's nothing to eat today. Dozens of demons have been eaten. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from love. Chapter 760. Taizu wanted to stop the crystal, but the pressure around him was too heavy. Even he could not bear it. Fortunately, the crystal stopped in mid-air. It floated quietly in mid-air. The green light was like water ripples rippling in all directions. It was dazzling. The surrounding stone walls were illuminated with a faint green color. The heaven-wrecking holy seed inside was clearly visible. Taizu held his breath. This was the closest he had ever been to the Tutian baby. At a glance, it was no different from an ordinary medicinal herb seed. Who would have thought that such a small thing would have the power to destroy the world? Fortunately, with the layer of crystal as a barrier, its aura and pressure were basically blocked. If it really appeared and was completely exposed, who knew what kind of terrifying situation it would be? Taizu turned around and glanced at Chu Luiyue. Her eyes were closed as she cultivated in peace, allowing the surrounding energy of heaven and earth to quickly enter her body. Taizu's expression was solemn. To be able to meet the Tutian baby was undoubtedly a great opportunity. However, this kind of opportunity was not something that everyone could afford to accept. The slightest bit of carelessness could cost one's life. I wonder if the girl can survive this time. While Taizu was filled with worry, Chu Luiyue's aura had already quietly increased. All the energy flowed through her limbs and bones into her dantian, and finally disappeared into the water droplet. After being tempered, the water droplet spat out the pure force and poured it into Chu Luiyue's body. Under the imperceptible influence, the power contained in Chu Luiyue's muscles, bones, blood, and flesh were all improved. Time passed bit by bit. Chu Luiyue was completely immersed in her cultivation, so she did not notice the passage of time. However, for Taizu, this waiting time was especially unbearable. Gradually, he realized that the situation was not what he had expected. This was because Chu Luiyue had already devoured too much energy. According to her current realm, she should have reached her limit long ago. However, Chu Luiyue's expression did not change. His expression was calm and there was not the slightest difference. Streaks of dark green light, containing abundant power, all entered her body. This isn't right. The Taizu widened his eyes in disbelief. Chu Luiyue's body? Why does it seem like a bottomless pit? He knew that Chu Luiyue had a few trump cards and was much stronger than ordinary cultivators. But wasn't this too exaggerated? For some reason, Taizu suddenly recalled that when Chu Luiyue was polishing the Cloud Sky copper sword, he had forced the Tianlei to stay on the sword for a long time. In the end, he had gone up and pulled it down himself. It was a different approach to achieve the same result as the current situation. None of these were things that normal people could do. The Taizu looked at Chu Luiyue with a headache. He was both happy and worried. He was happy that Chu Luiyue's cultivation talent and potential seemed to be better than he had expected. After all, she was a descendant of his bloodline. The Taizu really didn't know how to dote on her now. He was worried that Chu Luiyue had devoured so much energy all of a sudden, and it was even taken from the Tutian baby. Would she really be fine? If that thing exploded, even his old bones wouldn't be able to help much. He turned his gaze slightly and looked at the red-tailed phoenix that was guarding Chu Luiyue. It had been standing there from the beginning. At some point in time, its body was enveloped in a layer of dark green light. It was Chu Luiyue's contracted magical beast. Naturally, it would be affected when Chu Luiyue's strength increased. However, compared to his worries, the red-tailed phoenix retracted its wings and closed its eyes. It seemed to be much more at ease. It was as if it wasn't worried that anything would happen to Chu Luiyue. But right at this moment, a loud boom suddenly came from the crystal. The Taizu immediately turned around and was shocked to see that the last seal on it had finally dissipated. The crystal began to vibrate slightly. In an instant, the surrounding light began to surge back towards the crystal. The light that had filled the entire space retreated at a speed visible to the naked eye like a receding tide. Soon the surroundings dimmed and finally fell into complete darkness. The Taizu's heart tightened as he took a step closer to Chu Luiyue. The aura around his body instantly accumulated. At this moment, the air seemed to have completely frozen. Just as the Taizu was about to think of a way to bring Chu Luiyue away from this place, a speck of starlight suddenly appeared in the darkness. Gradually, the speck of starlight began to expand. The light lit up and it was indeed the same crystal. However, at this moment, there was only a faint green glow left on the crystal. For some reason, the Taizu felt that this light was different from the one he had seen before. A halo of light spread out from the crystal. Wherever it passed, space collapsed. A large patch of darkness appeared. The halo of light was transparent and revealed an extremely light layer of green. The Taizu knew that something was wrong. Just as he was about to exert his strength, he suddenly realized that his strength was completely suppressed and could not be used at all. Soon, the halo of light spread to this side and gently passed through the translucent soul of the Taizu. Then it arrived in front of Chu Luiyue and enveloped her. To the Taizu's relief, this did not seem to have any effect on Chu Luiyue. When the halo of light spread to the edge of the surrounding stone walls, it finally stopped. If someone were to look down from above, this place would look like a huge green amber. The Taizu looked up and saw an endless darkness. He frowned slightly. The two Tian baby should have swallowed all the energy from the outside world. Next, he was afraid that, buzz. After a short moment of silence, the crystal trembled even more violently. It seemed that the two Tian baby wanted to completely break free from it. The Taizu stared at it closely, his heart in his throat. This two Tian baby was not as big as the one he had seen before, and its power should not be as terrifying. However, if it really came out, it would be difficult to control it. Within the halo of light, all the energy from the outside world had already been divided up by Chu Luiyue and the two Tian baby. A crazy suction force spread out from the crystal. It seemed that it wanted to take back the energy in Chu Luiyue's body. The black shield in front of Chu Luiyue began to shake because of the cracks in the ground. At this moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. Two red flames were burning in her eyes. She stared at the two Tian baby and slowly raised her hand. A transparent water droplet suddenly appeared in front of her. She gently moved her hand forward. Bang! The water droplet splashed. In an instant, it condensed into a water curtain in front of her. That terrifying suction force was immediately blocked outside. Chu Luiyue's hand moved slightly and made a grabbing motion in the air. The crystal was actually coming toward her. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 761. However, the crystal seemed to have sensed the danger and released an extremely strong aura. In the end, it stopped 10 steps away from the water curtain. But this time it didn't try to snatch Chu Luiyue's power. Chu Luiyue tried again and realized that she couldn't make it move forward, so she gave up. She stared at the crystal for a while and chuckled. I hate it when people snatch my things. As if it was afraid, the crystal suddenly took a step back. Taizu? What's going on? It's different from what I expected again. The two Tian baby is hidden in the crystal, but it's actually afraid of Chu Luiyue? Even though Taizu had seen how domineering Chu Luiyue was when she dealt with Tianlei, he still felt that the impact was too great and hard to digest. To be honest, although this thing was the one who pulled Chu Luiyue down, it was actually Chu Luiyue who was snatching its energy now. After all, the energy that Chu Luiyue swallowed was collected by this two Tian baby. However, Chu Luiyue was so self-righteous as if the two Tian baby was really taking advantage of her. Taizu felt a headache coming on again. He had stayed in the Tianling God realm for thousands of years, but he didn't know when the two Tian baby had become so cowardly. Has the world really changed? Taizu looked at the crystal with a complicated expression and found it hard to accept. He could even clearly hear the sound of something collapsing in his heart. Ever since he got together with Chu Luiyue, this kind of thing happened from time to time. Many things in the world have become inconceivable. Most importantly, she herself seems to be used to it and doesn't think she's that cruel. There probably aren't many people in the entire continent who would dare to threaten the two Tian baby with this kind of tone. Taizu looked at the scene in front of him and fell into deep thought. Of course, the two Tian baby wouldn't be afraid of a stage 5 warrior. The key should be that water curtain. This water curtain wasn't big and was only about the height of a person. It just happened to appear in front of Chu Luiyue and separated her from the two Tian baby. The two Tian baby seemed to be very afraid of this water curtain and refused to get close to it. It didn't even hesitate to give up the energy that Chu Luiyue had swallowed. After a short silence, the crystal began to vibrate again. But this time, compared to before, he was much more restrained. The surrounding space gradually became viscous. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. However, the great ancestor seemed to have suddenly thought of something and gasped in shock. Taizu, what's wrong? Asked Chu Luiyue in confusion. Taizu, to the crystal, to the crystal, to the crystal, to the crystal, 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 the crystal, the crystal, 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 crystal. It controls this space. Have you noticed that this place seems to be different? Chu Luiyue nodded. The speed of the energy flow seems to have slowed down. Taizu paused and said with difficulty. This is because the flow of time here has slowed down. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. She knew what this meant. Legend had it that those who had broken through to stage 9 could create their own divine territory. And in that divine territory, everything could be controlled at will, including the flow of time. The stronger one was, the more amazing their control in this aspect. There were many benefits to slowing down the flow of time. For example, cultivators could enter it to cultivate, and they could also cultivate some natural treasures. If 1 day in the outside world was equivalent to 10 days in the divine territory, then it was equivalent to increasing one's cultivation speed by 10 times. Medicinal herbs that took 100 years to grow could be harvested in 10 years. In short, the benefits were countless. But wasn't that something that only the legendary top powerhouses could do? Even someone as strong as Taizu only left behind an incomplete Tianling divine territory back then, and he couldn't do this. And this 2 Tian baby? Rumor has it that the 2 Tian baby can do this. Taizu frowned and nodded. Only then did Chu Liyue realize that the 2 Tian baby seemed to be stronger than she had imagined. It probably wants to trap you here. The long time would probably be very difficult to endure. If Chu Liyue couldn't endure it, it would give it a chance. At that time, this is good. Chu Liyue's eyes lit up as she said happily. What? Taizu was confused. You're not worried that it will trap you here forever? It was dark here and she was alone. Even if she wasn't afraid, wouldn't she feel lonely after a long time? One had to know that being in such an environment for a long time could definitely drive people crazy. Even with him around, it wouldn't be easy to endure. Who knew when they would be able to get out? Chu Liyue blinked and smiled. What's there to worry about? I think we can take advantage of this opportunity to cultivate. Can you tell how much slower the flow of time here is compared to the outside world? Taizu hesitated for a moment and said, probably. A day in the outside world is equivalent to a month here. But here there is no sun or moon, so it should be difficult to know how much time has passed. Chu Liyue smiled and took out an hourglass from her universe ring. That's not a problem. This hourglass counts for an entire day, and it will automatically turn over when it's full. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to help me pay more attention in the future. She entered a cultivation state and had no concept of time. With Taizu's help, it would be much more convenient. Taizu clicked his tongue. You have a lot of things with you. You even have this. Chu Liyue coughed. In fact, she didn't prepare this for herself. When Rongxiu gave her the universe ring, she had a lot of things with her. Chapter 762. The fragment was very thin, only the size of a fingernail. It looked very inconspicuous. However, when Taizu saw this scene, a trace of shock flashed across his face. Without the suppression of the seal, the crystal began to shatter. Just as he was extremely nervous, he saw the fragment flying towards Chu Liyue. The fragment was pale green, crystal clear, and contained an extremely majestic power. Wherever it passed, the viscous space was almost cut apart. Just like that, it slowly and steadily flew to the front of the water curtain. Then an amazing scene happened. The fragment did not directly pass through the water curtain. Instead, it gradually melted silently. Soon, a faint green color appeared on the transparent water curtain. Then a faint green water droplet gently condensed and flew towards Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue swallowed the water droplet naturally, and then converted the energy contained in it into her own force. The aura on her body strengthened again. The whole process was smooth and there was no pause at all. Taizu opened his mouth, but suddenly felt that he was at a loss for words. Wasn't Chu Liyue equivalent to swallowing the power accumulated by the 2 Tian baby in a disguised form? Did he just take the energy from the crystal for himself just like that? Looking at Chu Liyue's calm face, and even her complexion was a little rosy, Taizu suddenly felt that his previous worries were unnecessary. The heaven-wrecking holy seed is formidable, but when it meets Chu Liyue who doesn't play by the rules, it was still unknown who would be able to outplay the other. Taizu thought for a moment, and simply retreated a few steps from the position in front of Chu Liyue to the right front of her, making it easier for her to snatch the power of the 2 Tian baby more smoothly. Looking at the red-tailed phoenix, who was very calm from the beginning to the end, Taizu faintly thought that it should have known that Chu Liyue would do such a thing. As expected, he took after his master. His arrogant and disdainful temperament was exactly the same. After putting down the initial worry in his heart, Taizu calmed down a lot and began to stand by the side. Watch the show. Chu Liyue was slowly killing time in the god's domain created by the 2 Tian baby. She was currently unable to leave, nor was she able to contact anyone from the outside world. She could only focus on her cultivation. On the other hand, Qin Yi and the rest didn't know about her current situation, so they were naturally very worried. Qin Yi felt a little uneasy as he stared at the faint dark green glow emitting from the broken branches. The inexplicable crack on the tree trunk made him tense up. The seal should have been completely destroyed. He remembered clearly that Chu Liwei had been swallowed by the same color of light below. From the looks of it, it was very likely that they had already surged up from underground. If it were to erupt, it would be extremely dangerous. This made him even more worried about Chu Liu's current condition. Qin Yi held his breath and focused as he walked forward step by step and stood still in front of the tree trunk. This mother tree was very thick and strong. Standing in front of this tree trunk, he seemed very small. The leaves on the tree trunk had all fallen off cleanly. Standing close to the tree trunk, he could see countless tiny cracks on it. Every crack was filled with that strange light. It seemed like it would burst out the next moment. Qin Yi's muscles tensed up as he stretched his hand forward. However, before he could touch the tree trunk, the light suddenly dimmed. In just a split second, all the light in the tiny cracks disappeared. Soundless. This one Yeshan also finally stopped curling up and withered. The surroundings were so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Qin Yi paused for a moment. A silver light flashed in his hand and a sword appeared. He stared straight ahead as he held the sword with both hands and slowly but firmly slashed it down. Crack. The sword glinted coldly. A layer of bark was sliced off. A deep sword mark was left on the tree trunk. Qin Yi focused his gaze and realized that all the energy in the tree trunk had been swallowed, and it had become much more brittle because of its withered state. However, most of it couldn't be seen. That frightening aura seemed to have dissipated as well. After waiting for a while, there was silence and nothing happened. A light breeze blew over and Qin Yi felt a chill on his back. He closed his eyes, kept his sword, and slowly retreated. Mu Hongyu and the rest watched nervously from behind. They didn't even dare to blink, afraid that they would miss something. Everyone was shocked when they saw Qin Yi actually turn around after sending out the sword. Lei Laosi couldn't hold it in and took 2 steps forward first. He hurriedly asked, "Big brother, how is it?" Qin Yi shook his head. Lei Laosi's face turned pale. The other people's expressions also froze. Qin Yi sighed and explained, "I can't be sure. What we can be sure of is that she is currently trapped by a strange force and is unable to come out. Originally that force should have rushed out, but for some reason, it retreated instead." Lei Laosi was dazed. "Big brother, you mean, you should still remember the scene when we first came here, right?" Qin Yi glanced at him and squinted his eyes slightly. Back then the same thing happened to this mother tree. A force wanted to rush out, but that 9-colored heavenly pheasant appeared and repaired the seal, so that incident was left unsettled. Lei Laosi's eyes flickered and he nodded. In actual fact, the situation back then wasn't completely like that. How could the 9-colored heavenly pheasant do this alone? However, there was no need to tell these children this. So, is it still because of that 9-colored heavenly pheasant this time? No, it's already broken through to become a red-tailed phoenix. Perhaps, it became even stronger? Qin Yi nodded. It's not impossible. When Mu Hongyu and the rest heard this, they heaved a sigh of relief. This means that Lu Yu still has a high chance of coming out? The red-tailed phoenix is a legendary fiend. It should be able to help her, right? Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran were both optimistic. Only Chang Wanzhou looked deeply at Qin Yi, pressed his lips tightly together and didn't say anything. I've seen that scene before. The red-tailed phoenix definitely isn't a match for that force. However, Qin Yi clearly didn't want Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran to know about this. Then what should we do now? Can we only wait here for Lu Yu? Asked Yi Ranran with a frown. Qin Yi turned around and looked at that mother tree. Let's hope so. At the border where the Mystic Forest and Mirror Lake connected, the appearance of the dancing lotus made Shangguan Wan and the rest very excited. She immediately suggested for Mu Qinghe to retrieve the dancing lotus. Once she said that, the originally noisy surroundings instantly quietened down. Everyone looked at Mu Qinghe with different expressions. Curious, envious, worried. Everyone knew that Mirror Lake was dangerous. The first to go would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. Mu Qinghe kept quiet for a while and nodded. Yes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 763. Then Mu Qinghe turned around and walked in the direction of the dancing lotus. The boundary between the mystic forest and the mirror lake was very clear. In the middle was something like a dam. On one side was the thick ground of the mystic forest that was filled with fallen leaves, and on the other side was the mirror lake that was glistening with water. Surprisingly, the isolated dam was only an inch wide, but none of the leaves from the mystic forest flew to the lake on the other side. The waves on the lake also did not cross the dam and flow to the other side. There seemed to be an invisible barrier in the middle that separated the two sides clearly. Mu Qinghe soon arrived at the narrow dam. He took a deep breath, circulated the force in his body and swung his right hand. A long sword flew out. It floated in front of him. Mu Qinghe jumped and stood on the flying sword. Just as he was about to ride the sword forward, he inadvertently glanced at the lake and found that there seemed to be something sparkling on the surface of the lake. He squinted his eyes and looked over. Then he was stunned on the spot. Because the sparkling thing was actually a piece of floating ice. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on it, and the clear, glass-like floating ice reflected the bright and dazzling light. The mirror lake was vast and boundless. Its borders were close to the mystic forest and the Red Moon Desert. It was like spring and summer all year round, and the water rippled. Why would such a piece of floating ice suddenly appear? Vice Admiral Mu, is there a problem? Shengguan saw that Mu Qinghe was not moving and could not help but urge him. Mu Qinghe did not respond immediately. Instead he looked around. Sure enough, he saw another piece of floating ice not far away. This piece of floating ice was quietly floating on the surface of the lake. It was inconspicuous. If not for the fact that Mu Qinghe happened to be standing in the sky in the afterglow of the setting sun, he would definitely not have noticed it. For example, Shengguan and the others did not see this strange situation. Mu Qinghe felt a little uneasy. This mirror lake is strange. Shengguan frowned. What's strange? Mu Qinghe raised her hand and pointed. Floating ice has never appeared in Mirror Lake before. Shengguan looked at Mu Qinghe's serious expression and thought that something big had happened. Who would have thought that it was only because of one or two pieces of floating ice? She chuckled and said calmly, "That's right. It's just two pieces of floating ice. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? If Vice Admiral Mu is really worried, why don't we get the dancing lotus back as soon as possible and leave immediately?" Mu Qinghe's frown deepened. "Third Princess, you may not know this, but this mirror lake has always been like this for a long time. There has never been such a situation before. I'm afraid that something strange has happened. For safety's sake, it's better for everyone to evacuate immediately." Shengguan was stunned. Evacuate immediately? What about the dancing lotus? It wasn't easy for them to meet, so how could they leave just like that? What should he say when he returned to the West Hill? Also, her Yuan Meridian, Vice Admiral Mu, this consort thinks that you're worrying too much. I know that you've been in Dehuang Swamp for many years and know this place very well. But how many years has Mirror Lake existed? Do you dare to say that it has been like this since the day it existed? It is also possible that it has already appeared in a similar situation when you were unaware of it. What do you think? Mu Qinghe couldn't refute her words. Shengguan had made up her mind to take the dancing lotus back. If Vice Admiral Mu is really worried, why don't we invite Elder Qiushi along? Elder Qiushi didn't show any fear or worry when he heard this. Instead he was excited. I'll naturally obey Third Princess's orders. Retrieving the dancing lotus would undoubtedly be a great achievement. Furthermore, it was a rare natural treasure, and its entire body was extremely precious. Even just touching it might be very beneficial. As for danger, there was nothing here except for the lake water. It wasn't as complicated as the mystic forest. Even if they encountered any danger, they could just run back. How dangerous could it be? Shengguan nodded. Then I'll have to trouble Elder Qiushi and Vice Admiral Mu. Elder Qiushi responded and quickly rushed to Mu Qinghe's side. Mu Qinghe glanced at him. Since he wanted to die, there was nothing to persuade him. Vice Admiral Mu, please. Elder Qiushi raised his hand. Mu Qinghe didn't say anything else. She rode on her sword and continued forward. Elder Qiushi followed closely behind. His eyes were already glued to the dancing lotus in the center of the lake in the distance. Mu Qinghe looked down from time to time, and her expression gradually turned cold. Because she realized that there were more than two pieces of floating ice on the lake. The closer they went to the center, the more floating ice there were. And they gradually gathered together to form a large ice surface. And that translucent dancing lotus was already surrounded by a layer of ice. Mu Qinghe stopped. Elder Qiushi hurriedly stopped as well. Vice Admiral Mu, why aren't you continuing forward? The dancing lotus is right in front of you. You can retrieve it soon. Mu Qinghe's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. There was definitely something wrong with this Mirror Lake. He had been to Mirror Lake many times, and whenever he got close, he would encounter all kinds of dangerous situations. But this time the Mirror Lake was too calm. Not only did this not make him feel at ease, but it also made him feel even more uneasy. There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Elder Qiushi, since you want the dancing lotus so much, why don't you go first? Elder Qiushi was a little scared. His gaze wandered back and forth between Mu Qinghe and the dancing lotus. He was in a dilemma. He really wanted to retrieve the dancing lotus, but he was also afraid that something would happen. Mu Qinghe's reaction really didn't make one feel at ease. Seeing that the two of them had stopped, Shangguan couldn't help but urge them. Elder Qiushi made up his mind. There were so many people here anyway. What was there to worry about? If he was the one who retrieved the dancing lotus, his status would definitely rise when he returned to West Hill. At the thought of this, the balance in his heart finally leaned towards the side of greed. He walked past Mu Qinghe and approached. However, he wasn't stupid. He didn't use his hands to retrieve it. Such a treasure was definitely not that easy to obtain. He waved his sleeve and threw out a rope as thick as a thumb, wrapping it around the branch of the dancing lotus. After waiting for a moment, there was nothing unusual. Elder Qiushi felt a little more confident. He pulled his wrist back, trying to pull the dancing lotus out. However, just as he moved, the rope slid down the branch. Elder Qiushi missed his target. He looked up in shock and realized that the branch was extremely smooth. There was a faint luster on it, and it was indeed very difficult to bind it with a rope. He thought for a moment and set up a barrier around himself. At the same time, he put away the rope and used his sword. He approached step by step and finally raised his sword to slash. However, just as the sword came into contact with the branch, it actually slipped. Before Elder Qiushi could react, his body was pulled down by an invisible force. Plop. It penetrated the ice layer and fell into the lake. Digression, 6:30 p.m. February has been abolished. Sob 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 sob. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 764. A hole instantly appeared on the smooth and flat ice surface. A few drops of lake water splashed out, but Elder Qiushi's figure had already completely sunk into the lake and disappeared. In fact, he didn't even have the time to cry out in alarm. Mu Qinghe, who was standing closest to him, had a change in expression, and his pupils constricted. The entire thing happened too suddenly. Before he could react, everything had already ended. He didn't even have the chance to take action. When Shangguan and the rest, who were standing far away, saw this scene, they were all stunned on the spot. Especially Shangguan. She was originally waiting happily and expectantly for Elder Qiushi to retrieve the dancing lotus. She was about to succeed, but she didn't expect. She didn't even see what exactly happened. Just now. Wasn't everything fine? In just the blink of an eye, Elder Qiushi suddenly fell into the water. Shangguan widened her eyes in shock. After Elder Qiushi fell into the water, he didn't make a single sound. Especially now, when the water surface seemed to have regained its calmness. Under normal circumstances, anyone who fell into the water would struggle and ask for help. But Elder Qiushi didn't. There's only one possibility: he's already dead. In that short moment, Shangguan clutched her chest, and her footsteps faltered as she instinctively grabbed Jiang Yuqing's arm. Yuqing, what happened just now? Jiang Yuqing knitted his brows tightly and spoke in a low voice. He seemed to have been dragged down by something. But I didn't see it clearly either. Shangguan's throat was dry, and she felt both fearful and relieved. Luckily, I didn't go over personally just now. If not, I would be the one dead. But Elder Qiushi is a stage 7 warrior. How can it be? To be able to take his life in such a short period of time, it's enough to show how scary it is. If it were someone else, they might die even faster than me. Jiang Yuqing's face was also very dark. Elder Duanmu-chan is already gone. Now even Elder Qiushi is. This trip was much more dangerous than he had expected. Shangguan lowered her eyes and her eyes flashed. She was the one who killed Elder Duanmu-chan, but Jiang Yuqing didn't seem to know. He probably thought that she would only attack these young geniuses, right? Little did they know that she had long found Elder Duanmu-chan an eyesore. This was because Duanmu-chan was not her confidant, and he had always been on good terms with Shangguan. Elder Duanmu-chan had an amiable temperament. Although he was an elder of the royal family, he had never participated in the affairs of the royal family. Even though Shangguan admired him back then, he did not become her man. He had always kept to himself. He was still the same when he came to Shangguan. Most people wouldn't care, but Shangguan couldn't stand it. Moreover, he always used Shangguan's standards when she was in power to measure everything she did. This violated Shangguan's taboo. Therefore, she might as well take this opportunity to get rid of Elder Duanmu Chun. However, this was not important. Anyway, many people had died in her hands. One more didn't make a difference. Those who couldn't be used by her were dead. It was a pity that Elder Chioshi died. After the initial shock, she finally regained her senses. She looked at Mu Qinghe with suppressed anger. Vice Admiral Mu, what's going on? You were close to Elder Chioshi. Why didn't you help? She even suspected that Mu Qinghe did it on purpose. He had always disliked Elder Chioshi. Mu Qinghe said coldly. The last general also wanted to help, but he didn't have the strength. Even Elder Chioshi didn't have the strength to retaliate. Could it be that Your Highness, the third princess, thought that this general was still some distance away from Elder Chioshi just now? Could it be that this general could reach him first if he made a move later? Shangguan choked. Mu Qinghe's words made sense. Everyone clearly saw the situation just now. Mu Qinghe probably didn't have time to help. The last general already said that there's something wrong with Mirror Lake. Now you finally believe it, right? Mu Qinghe's words made Shangguan's face turn red and white. Wasn't saying this in front of so many people the same as publicly criticizing her? Mu Qinghe took one last look at the spot where Elder Chioshi disappeared. There seemed to be a faint green light flashing by. He narrowed his eyes and was about to take a closer look when a layer of ice formed on the surface again. That ice hole was quickly repaired and looked exactly the same as before. It was impossible to tell that it had once shattered and that a person had fallen in. More and more layers of ice began to form on the surface of the lake in the distance. Mu Qinghe said in a low voice. Third princess, eldest young master, it's better for us to leave Mirror Lake as soon as possible. In the quiet and sticky space, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged and was cultivating peacefully. Not far away on the opposite side, the crystal quietly floated. Suddenly, the layer of faint green light on the outside fluctuated. Then, a faint green light passed through the light and headed toward the crystal. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and opened her eyes. Seeing the light, she raised her eyebrows slightly and muttered softly. It has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. The energy in the mystic forest should have been completely devoured by it. She didn't expect it to be able to get such an abundant energy. Chu Luiyue's red lips curved. With a slight thought, the water curtain shook gently. The ball of light was about to fly to the crystal and was about to merge with it. However, when the water curtain moved, the ball of light also seemed to be pulled by something and flew over in a wobbly manner. Like the previous fragment, the light silently merged with the water curtain and finally turned into a water droplet and arrived in front of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved. Since you're so polite, I'll kindly accept it. After saying that, she swallowed the energy of the water droplet. Taizu, who was standing at the side, raised his eyebrows fiercely and glanced at the crystal. It was trembling slightly. It wasn't the kind that wanted to break out forcefully. It was because of anger. Digression, I didn't add any new chapters today. Because I ate the updated chapters. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 765. For the first time, Taizu felt that the two-Tian baby was a little pitiful. It had finally broken the seal, and just as it was about to break out, Chu Luiyue appeared out of nowhere. Not only did she snatch the energy it had gathered, she even snatched it several times. It didn't know how she had gotten this energy, or if Chu Luiyue had forcibly snatched it away. Who wouldn't be angry when the duck in their mouth flew away? The key point was that Taizu was still afraid of Chu Luiyue. If it wasn't for the water curtain, Taizu believed that Chu Luiyue would definitely not be a match for the two-Tian baby. But how could there be so many ifs in the world? Speaking of which, it was Taizu who had forcibly pulled Chu Luiyue down. It was just asking for trouble. Taizu put his hands in his sleeves and laughed. According to the current development of the situation, the chances of the two-Tian baby coming out were even slimmer. It was hard to say who would be able to endure who. Chu Luiyue's aura was still increasing. She carefully and patiently refined all of this energy, transforming it into her own force. Her flesh, blood, tendons, and bones became more and more resilient under the cleansing of this pure energy. Time slowly passed. At a certain moment, Chu Luiyue's aura skyrocketed. Crack. A slight sound came from within her body. Chu Luiyue's strength had finally advanced to the middle stage of stage 5. Taizu noticed this movement and subconsciously glanced at the hourglass next to him, a trace of shock flashing through his eyes. Chu Yue's breakthrough speed was too fast. Although he had already mentally prepared himself, it was still hard to believe that Chu Liyue had smoothly and quickly crossed the threshold of the middle stage. She had the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Although it couldn't be compared to the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, her cultivation speed was obviously faster than the average Daijing Yuan Meridian cultivator. Taizu put his hands behind his back and looked at Chu Liyue with a solemn gaze. When she was Shangguanyu, her cultivation had reached the peak of a rank 8 warrior and she was only one step away from becoming a rank 9 warrior. With such an experience, Chu Liyue would undoubtedly take fewer detours when she cultivated in this life. Plus, she had many heaven-defying opportunities. Taizu sighed softly, his eyes flashing with admiration. Although it was a pity that Chu Liyue didn't have the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, she had been able to come so far. He wondered what realm she would be able to reach by the time she got out of here. The outside world had no way of knowing what was happening underground. At this moment, Shangguanyu Yang faced a dilemma. On one hand, Yu of the lotus flower. On the other hand, he hadn't obtained the dancing lotus yet. It would be a pity to leave just like that. After Mu Qinghe said that, everyone fell silent and looked at Shangguanyu. Even the sect disciples who had been admiring the beautiful scenery of Mirror Lake and were full of yearning were now nervous. In the beginning, no one took Mu Qinghe's warning to heart. But when something happened to Elder Qiushi, they immediately understood that this place was completely different from what they had expected. Mu Qinghe's words weren't alarmist words. She might even have been tactful. They came to the great desolate swamp mostly for the treasures here. But the premise was that they had to be alive. The dancing lotus was indeed a rare treasure, but if they had to pay with their lives for it, no one would continue to do it. Shangguanyu also knew this. At this time, it wasn't appropriate for her to send anyone. That would be sending them to their deaths. But she really wanted to get the dancing lotus. Jiang Yuqing saw that she seemed to be very conflicted and could roughly guess her thoughts. Everyone saw the scene just now. This Mirror Lake is indeed strange. If we stay any longer, I'm afraid the casualties will be even more serious. It's better to evacuate first. Anyway, the dancing lotus is here and it will bloom for a few years. Let's go back to Xiling first and think of a way to get it later. Shangguanyu was still a little hesitant. But, what if something happens during this time? You've seen how difficult it is to deal with the dancing lotus. Even Elder Qiushi couldn't escape. Who can easily take it away? Shangguanyu thought about it and felt that his words made sense. In the entire Tianling dynasty, there weren't many people who were stronger than Elder Qiushi. As long as the news of the dancing lotus's appearance wasn't leaked, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Jiang Yuqing looked at her and his voice became gentler. Also, you need to go back and recuperate as soon as possible. It won't delay anything if you come back after you've recovered. These words finally convinced Shangguanyu. Her body and face both needed to be recuperated. With the Mirror Lake in this state, she definitely wouldn't have the chance to make a move on anyone. It was better to go back to Xiling first. Perhaps she could find a suitable person and opportunity. She thought for a moment and finally nodded. Okay. After Shangguanyu agreed, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The two royal elders who came with them had both died. The danger of the Dahuang swamp was obvious. If they were a little unlucky, they might be the ones who died. Under Mu Qinghe's command, everyone began to evacuate. However, compared to the excitement they had when they came, everyone now looked dejected and disappointed. They had all come with all kinds of expectations, but who knew that they would end up with nothing and almost lose their lives? Because there were more injured people, Zhu Hong and the others from Dragon Teeth Mountain walked at the back. However, compared to the other sects, they were luckier. Although they had many injured people, their survival rate was extremely high. No one died. Just this point alone was enough to make people envious. After all, the disciples who came here were all famous geniuses from various sections. The death of any one of them was a great loss to them. However, the most miserable was not the few weaker sects in Tianji Manor, but the Purple Shao Sword sect. They came with 10 people. When they returned, only 3 people were left. One of them was even the Purple Shao Sword sect's young master, Song Qingyin. Although the remaining 2 saved their lives, they were seriously injured. Their future cultivation might be affected. Who would have thought that the high-spirited Purple Shao Sword sect would end up like this in the end? The sky had already completely darkened. A bright moon rose into the sky, scattering its light. Everyone traveled for a long time and finally returned to the border area of the 3 places. Standing here again, everyone's mood was already completely different from before. On the left, the once lush mystic forest had already become a wilderness. The ground was rugged and uneven. Withered branches and withered leaves covered it, mixed with withered tree trunks and festering tree roots. At a glance it was like a ghost domain. A sinister aura enveloped the area. Just looking at it from afar made one shudder. Zhu Hong could not help but look at Mu Qinghe and ask softly, "Vice Admiral Mu Hongyu and the rest are still inside. Shall we wait for them?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 766. As soon as he said that, the people nearby fell silent for a moment. They all looked over with different expressions. Mu Qinghe looked serious and did not answer immediately. Instead, it was Shang Guanwan who heard the commotion and narrowed her eyes dangerously, asking deliberately, "Vice Admiral Mu, what are you talking about?" Mu Qinghe knew that she could actually hear them, but she asked deliberately. However, he still lowered his head slightly and said word by word, "Mu Hongyu and the others have not returned yet. Your Highness, should we wait here for a while and bring them back to West Hill?" Shang Guanwan widened her eyes slightly as if she was very surprised. "They're not here yet? It's been a long time. Haven't they given up?" She did not need to say the rest of the sentence. Everyone knew what she meant. The surroundings were silent. Zhu Hong could not help but argue. "Your Highness, they're in the Mystic Forest. They probably don't know that we're planning to go back. They didn't even hear the news. How could they rush here?" Shang Guanwan was deliberately making things difficult for them. "Oh, I see. I was only thinking about retrieving the dancing lotus to treat my father's illness. I forgot about these things." Shang Guanwan reacted quickly and immediately defended herself. She glanced at Zhu Hong with gloomy eyes and said meaningfully, "It seems that Dragon Teeth Mountain and Chongshu Pavilion are really close. You're still thinking about them at this time." Zhu Hong straightened his back and said frankly, "Lu Yu saved the people of Dragon Teeth Mountain. We all owe her a favor. Moreover, Hongyu is also there. Naturally we are worried." Shang Guanwan choked. Before she could speak, Zhu Hong continued, "Your Highness, we beg you to release the signal immediately and summon them back. We'll leave together when they return. The Dahuang swamp is full of danger. If they stay here alone, I'm afraid." Shang Guanwan was impatient and interrupted him. "If they don't come back, are we going to let so many people wait here forever?" "Zhu Hong, I know what you're thinking, but you have to know that the big picture is more important." Zhu Hong choked. Seeing that he had nothing to say, Shang Guanwan brushed her hair behind her ear with satisfaction. Anyway, with Qin Yi and Lei Laosi around, nothing should happen to them. Right now, everyone is gravely injured. Many people's injuries cannot be delayed. With that, she turned around to leave. Whoosh, the sharp sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang in his ears. Shang Guanwan turned her head in astonishment, only to see Jiang Yuqing holding a jade tube in his hand. Bang! Above the sky, a loud bang suddenly exploded. She looked up and saw a brilliant firework blooming in the night sky. Because it was night time, it was even more conspicuous. Even if Mu Hongyu and the others were in the Mystic Forest, they should be able to see it. Rest here for 2 hours. If they don't show up in 2 hours, we'll leave immediately. Jiang Yuqing's tone was very calm, but there was no room for disobedience. Obviously, he was not discussing it with Shang Guanwan, but directly making this decision. Yes. Mu Qinghe responded and ordered everyone to rest on the spot before setting off in 2 hours. Zhu Hong and the rest heaved a sigh of relief and started anxiously waiting for Mu Hongyu and the others to return. Other than them, there were many others who also looked in the direction of the Mystic Forest and waited silently. Whispers could be heard. "I wonder if they can come back in time. Compared to this, I'm more curious about Miss Chu's situation. Do you think she's really still alive?" "This is hard to say. Anyway, I owe Miss Chu my life. If it weren't for her, I would have died in the swamp of the Mystic Forest. It'd be best if she could come back. If not, then we have to be more polite when we see the people from Chongshu Pavilion. Actually, I think that there's a possibility. Have you forgotten that she won first place in the Wanzheng competition back then? Back then, she was already able to defeat so many people in the Tianling God realm. She might be able to turn danger into safety this time." "I hope so." There were many people who were saved by Chu Luiyue, and most of them were the iron-blooded Black Cavalry. They naturally valued this kindness even more. They also sincerely hoped that Chu Luiyue would return safely like the others. Shang Guanwan heard these words clearly. She clenched her fists and looked at Jiang Yuqing angrily. What does he mean by this? It's only 2 hours. It'll be over soon. Jiang Yuqing didn't seem to mind her emotions and only spoke indifferently. Many people are indebted to Chu Luiyue for saving their lives. If you leave just like this, have you thought about what they will say in private? Sheng Guanwan bit her lip and swallowed the words in her throat. She turned around and didn't look at Jiang Yuqing anymore. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Sheng Guanwan was scheming, but she was narrow-minded and short-sighted. She didn't look at the big picture. Didn't she know how important the Black Cavalry was to maintaining the imperial power? The Black Cavalry was like an iron plate. Anyone who kicked it forcefully would only suffer. Mu Qinghe was the deputy general of the Black Cavalry and held military power. His words were more dignified than Sheng Guanwan's, the third princess. This was also one of the reasons why Jiang Yuqing didn't choose to kill Mu Qinghe back then. One move could affect the whole body. Even if Mu Qinghe listened to him now, he didn't dare to underestimate Mu Qinghe and the Black Cavalry behind him. Looking at Sheng Guanwan's angry back, Jiang Yuqing rubbed his temples in annoyance. Back then Sheng Guanyu was the princess. Her position was stable and it could be said that no one could shake it. She could have been high and mighty in the imperial court and enjoyed everything. But she didn't. Jiang Yuqing had done a special investigation. Sheng Guanyu had put in a lot of effort for the blackguards, both in the open and in the dark. She also took a lot of credit for taking down Da Huang Swamp. This was also why the Black Cavalry had always respected and admired her. However, she didn't deliberately publicize this. Instead, she kept a very low profile. As a result, the world only knew that it was Mu Qinghe who volunteered to be her right-hand man after achieving outstanding military achievements. But they didn't know that there was such an inside story. Sheng Guanwan was promoted halfway and didn't have the upper hand. If she completely offended the Black Cavalry, she might fail at the last step. If it was Sheng Guanyu, how could she make such a low-level mistake? Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes. That face that was as bright as the moon appeared in his mind again. Her smile was bright, gentle, and elegant. There was a trace of nobility between her eyebrows. It was as if she was high and mighty and unapproachable. Jiang Yuqing's lips curled into a faint smile, but it quickly dissipated and was gradually replaced by hatred. He didn't mind that she didn't like him. As long as she didn't like others. But she didn't do it. That face gradually disappeared. It was replaced by another face. Jiang Yuqing looked at the mystic forest. If she could come out alive this time, mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 767. Bang. Hearing this loud sound, Mu Hongyu and the rest, who were still waiting in the mystic forest, all looked up. Yi Ranran widened his eyes slightly. That seems to be eldest young Master Zhang's signal. Mu Hongyu didn't have a good impression of Jiang Yuqing and the rest, so she frowned. It's already so late. Shouldn't they have left long ago? Yi Ranran explained. They seem to be gathering people. Maybe they're asking us to go back? Then the two of them looked at each other. That bunch of people clearly left long ago. Why are they still gathering us now? That's where the three realms intersect. Qin Yi glanced at it and said lightly. They're probably planning to wait for you guys before leaving. However, they probably won't wait for too long. If they really wanted Mu Hongyu and the rest to leave with them from the start, they would have sent the signal long ago. Why wait until now? We're already standing on the transportation formation. It doesn't matter if it's earlier or later. They're just calling people along the way. Mu Hongyu shook her head and was unmoved. I want to wait here for Lu Yu to come out. Me too. Yi Ranran nodded firmly. Chang Wanzhou stood at the side and didn't say much. In actual fact, he didn't even look at the signal flare. From beginning to end, his attention was focused on the mother tree. Lei Laosi glanced at the gradually dissipating fireworks and chuckled. Hypocrite. They were already very clear about what kind of person Jiang Yuqing was. The remaining few people shouldn't have been able to enter his eyes. For some reason he actually did this time. However, to Lei Laosi he didn't have good intentions no matter what. If it weren't because Her Highness wanted to form a contract with the red-tailed phoenix, they definitely wouldn't have let Jiang Yuqing off so easily. And that Sheng Guanwan, anyway, the nine-colored heavenly pheasant had already successfully broken through to become a red-tailed phoenix, so they didn't have to wait here anymore. When Her Highness comes out, they can also leave this place together. When that time comes, they'll suffer. This summoning signal did not attract their attention. After a brief chat, they put the matter to the back of their minds and concentrated on waiting for Chu Luiyue to come out. Under Qin Yi's request, Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran started cultivating while waiting. No one knew when Chu Luiyue would come out. It was always good to increase one's strength. As for Chang Wanzhou, after swallowing a pill he continued to stand guard. At first, Qin didn't pay much attention to it and thought that the pill was for him to treat his injuries. However, he soon discovered that Chang Wanzhou's aura was growing stronger. The key was that he did not absorb the energy of heaven and earth around him to increase his strength. Instead, the energy was emitted from his body. Therefore, even if he wasn't as focused on cultivation as Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran, his cultivation was still slowly improving. Gradually, a thin layer of frost covered Chang Wanzhou's body. Even the ground beneath his feet was covered in a layer of ice. A chilly aura was emitted from his body, but the Cloud Sky Copper Sword kept burning with a sparrow blue flame. The Cloud Sky Copper Sword contained Chu Liuyue's strength, so he could use this method to sense her aura more clearly. Just like that, Chang Wanzhou waited for Chu Liyue under the two extreme forces, one cold and one hot, while increasing his strength. What's wrong with this fellow? Lei Laosi finally noticed that something was amiss and couldn't help but mumble. I've never seen someone cultivate like this. Qin narrowed his eyes. There should be a cold aura in his body, and this cold aura contains a large amount of strength. As long as he dispels this cold aura, his strength will naturally increase. Lei Laosi secretly thought that his big brother's eyes were sharp and couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Big brother, you're not a celestial physician, so how do you know this? Qin smiled lightly. It's just a guess. When Chang Wanzhou heard this voice, he finally turned to look at the two of them. His gaze stopped on Qin Yi's face for a moment, and his brows, which were covered by his short blonde hair, knitted slightly as he subconsciously became alert. Other than myself, only Chu Liyue knows about my body's condition. Qin, how did he know? He said that it was a guess, but Chang Wanzhou didn't quite believe it. This guess was way too accurate. As though he saw through Chang Wanzhou's suspicion, Qin raised his brows. You don't have to look at me like that. I've seen a similar example in a book before. When I saw your situation, I naturally thought of it. A shocked expression flashed across Chang Wanzhou's face. After hesitating for a moment, he finally spoke and asked hesitantly, You said, you saw a similar situation like mine in a book before? Qin nodded. According to the records, that person successfully dispelled the cold aura in his body and broke through to become a top warrior. However, the process was very difficult, and normal people wouldn't be able to persevere. Actually, what he didn't say was that there wasn't only one example in that book. In actual fact, there were hundreds and thousands of people who encountered such a situation. Out of so many people, only one succeeded in the end. Those who didn't all died. This meant that there should be many people like that other than Chang Wanzhou. However, Chang Wanzhou should be the only one who managed to survive. However, he clearly didn't know anything about this. Chang Wanzhou pressed his lips together. What book is that? Can I take a look? Ever since he could remember, his body had been like this. He had no parents, no relatives, and no friends. Growing up in the barren and barbaric Nanjiang, he suffered a lot. If I didn't meet that person later on, I would have died in Thousand Reed Lake. That book isn't mine, and I think it can't be found anymore. At this point, a hint of desolation flashed across Qin Yi's eyes. When Chang Wanzhou saw this, he didn't ask any more. Instead, it was Qin Yi who suddenly asked after a moment of silence. The pill you swallowed just now should have helped you dispel this cold air, right? Chang Wanzhou nodded. Where did this pill come from? Chang Wanzhou didn't hide it. Lu Yu made it. This was within his expectations. Her Highness has also read that book, so it's normal for her to know how to make it. Qin Yi smiled faintly. You're really lucky. He actually survived it alone. Chang Wanzhou nodded seriously. My luck is really good. Everyone I met treated me well. Suddenly, an extremely faint pattern flashed across his glabella. Qin Yi was suddenly stunned. There's a seal in your body? Chang Wanzhou looked at him in shock and nodded hesitantly. Even Chu Liyue didn't know about this. That was because that seal was also covered by the cold air. Now that the cold air in his body gradually melted and dissipated, that seal gradually revealed itself. However, since that seal didn't do anything, he didn't pay much attention to it. Qin Yi was shocked as he hurriedly asked, Who left that seal for you? That seems to be digression. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Web. Chapter 768. Chang Wanzhou shook his head. I don't know either. He only knew that there was a seal in his body, but he didn't know when it appeared or who set it up. Also, this seal itself was very strange. If other people had a seal in their body, it would usually be used to suppress their force. However, this wasn't the case for his seal. It even froze because of the strong Yin aura. Until now, Chang Wanzhou still didn't know what the seal was used for. He had once thought of removing it, but he had tried many methods, but the seal remained unaffected. In the end, when he saw that the seal didn't move, he decided to just put this matter aside. He didn't expect Qin Yi to actually see through it. Also, he seemed to be very anxious. Disappointment flashed across Qin Yi's eyes when he heard Chang Wanzhou's reply. He walked to Chang Wanzhou and wanted to take a closer look to confirm if it was what he had guessed. However, the seal pattern had already disappeared. Seeing Qin Yi staring at his glabella, Chang Wanzhou instantly understood something. There's something on my head? After confirming that the seal wouldn't appear again, he sighed in his heart and nodded. It just flashed so I didn't see it clearly. Chang Wanzhou scrutinized his expression and asked tentatively, "What's the matter? You've seen the seal before?" Qin Yi kept quiet for a while before replying softly. "I think so, but the impression is a little blurry. Plus, I didn't see it clearly. I can't quite recall it." Chang Wanzhou was skeptical. If that seal really appeared on my glabella, Qin Yi's eyes would have been filled with shock the moment he saw it. That kind of expression definitely wasn't something that someone who couldn't recall would have. "I don't want to talk about it?" "Why is that?" However, Chang Wanzhou didn't continue asking. Qin Yi looked at him with a complicated gaze before retracting his gaze. After a while he said, "As your abilities increase, that seal will definitely appear again. Just be more careful. If there are any abnormalities, inform me as soon as possible." His tone was a little solemn. Chang Wanzhou thought for a moment and gently nodded. The few people around him were a little confused by this scene and looked over one after another. Lei Laosi couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what's wrong?" Qin Yi shook his head. "Nothing." Since he denied it like this, the others naturally couldn't continue to say anything. Lei Laosi was a little perturbed. His elder brother had always been calm and composed. Except for the time when he heard that something had happened to His Highness, he had almost never seen him so emotional. He didn't see the seal that flashed across Chang Wanzhou's head. He didn't know what it was that made his big brother lose his composure like this. After this small commotion, the group quieted down again. Only Qin Yi remained calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. If he was not mistaken, His Highness shouldn't know about this yet. When he had the chance, he had to inform her as soon as possible. An hour was gone in a flash. The direction of the mystic forest was silent. Mu Hongyu and the others were still nowhere to be seen. The hope in Zhu Hong and the others' eyes gradually dimmed. It's already so late, yet they still aren't here. They definitely don't intend to leave with us. Many people at the side also revealed regretful and disappointed expressions. They originally hoped that Chu Luiyue and the others could appear together. "It's time, right?" asked Shengguan Wan. At this point she had already calmed down. As Chu Luiyue and the others didn't come back on time, her mood was much better. This can only prove that Mu Hongyu and the others still haven't found Chu Luiyue. How can they find him? What a joke. Unless they flip the entire mystic forest upside down, there's still a slight possibility. However, by then, Chu Luiyue would probably have rotted into a pile of bones. Jiang Yuqing looked down and hid the emotions in his eyes. "Let's go." Mu Qinghe went forward and activated the transportation array. The group of people quickly disappeared. The cold moonlight sprinkled on the vast and boundless Dahuang swamp, bringing with it a bit of desolation and loneliness. Unknowingly, a red spot appeared on the moon. The red dot gradually expanded and soon, it covered the entire area without a sound. The originally bright and unparalleled moon completely turned blood red. It looked strange and strange. The hot and dry desert during the day became incomparably cold at night. The night wind blew and it was bone-chilling. Under the undulating sand dunes, something seemed to be agitating. Suddenly, an ethereal voice was heard. "She's back?" It was impossible to tell whether this voice was male or female. It was as pleasant as music and intoxicating. A moment later, sand rolled down from the sand dunes not far away, forming a quicksand and making rustling sounds. How is this possible? This seemed to be the voice of a baby. It sounded very young, but the tone was very mature with a trace of resentment. Back then she said that she would be back in a few days. In the end, a few years have passed and there's still no trace of her. How can a person who goes back on her words be trusted? I don't want to see her again in this life. If you don't want to see her, then why do you look outside every night of the red moon? Do you think we don't know what you've been doing all day? This time the one who spoke seemed to be an old man. His voice was old and had a bit of laziness. This desert has been stirred up by you. There's no peace in this place. The baby-like voice was silent for a long time before it said fiercely, So what if I'm looking? I just want to see how long she can drag it out. In this world, only she dares to lie to me like this. After scolding fiercely, it felt that it was not enough and muttered angrily. That damn girl. When I see her, I must teach her a good lesson. Let's see if she dares to run away again. If you want to hit her, you can hit her. I can't bear to hit her. The old man laughed. You old cunning man. Same to you. The voice that spoke at the beginning finally sounded again. That person seemed to chuckle and said slowly, what's the use of saying this now? The girl hasn't been seen yet. But, why did she go to the mystic forest? I haven't been here for a few years and you've even forgotten the rules. The baby-like voice scolded in a low voice, but then it stopped abruptly. Wait, there seems to be something wrong with the mystic forest? The other two were silent for a moment. That thing is coming out? The old man exclaimed. Why did she go there at this time? Didn't I tell her before? It seems that the girl's courage has grown a lot after not seeing her for a few years. The pleasant and ethereal voice seemed to be drifting with the wind. I'll go take a look myself. I'll go too. Why are you in such a hurry? Wait for me. The voices gradually quieted down. Only the subtle sound of sand flowing was left. The Red Moon Desert returned to peace again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 769. On the other side of the mystic forest, a few people had sneaked into it. How long has it been? How did the mystic forest become like this? Someone came. I think it's Mu Qinghe and a bunch of black cavalry. Also, there are a few more that we haven't seen before. These people are really unlucky to come here and encounter such a situation. Wait, why is that sparrow gone? I think I smell the red-tailed phoenix. Did that sparrow successfully break through? How is that possible? That fellow is missing half of her soul. Wait, there seem to be a few more people in front? Those two silly fellows are still here? Why are there a few more little ones? That sparrow really seems to have broken through. But why do I feel like she's underground? Could it be that she's old, so her ears and eyes aren't working well? You're right. She's underground. I think, she's with that thing, the one who said this was the elder. Once he said this, the other two instantly quietened down. After a moment, that baby-like voice sounded angrily. I told you to dig that thing out and give it to her. Give it to her. You just had to say that the timing wasn't right. Great, she really went down by herself now. If that girl bumps into it, I'll beat you up. There's nothing wrong with a child wanting something, but that thing isn't normal. If we really gave it to her directly, who knows what kind of trouble might have arisen. The pleasant voice didn't sound that anxious as it spoke slowly. I wonder who said that he wanted to teach that girl a lesson just now, but in the blink of an eye, he became angry with us because of her. Big Bao, you're really impressive. Try calling me Big Bao again? Little Bao? Damn pervert, you're courting death. Can the two of you fight further away? Don't disturb me from looking at the girl. Scram. Scram. This commotion didn't attract the attention of Qin Yi and the rest. The night was as cold as water. Everything here was no different from during the day. Yi Ranran and Mu Hongyu were already asleep. Chang Wanzhou was sitting cross-legged beside the two of them, the cloud sky copper sword lying across his knees. As Lei Laosi and Qin Yi had powerful cultivations, they didn't need to sleep. As long as they regulated their breathing, they could recover their energy. The two of them watched over Mu Hongyu and the others while looking at the completely withered Wan Yeshan. Suddenly, the wind in the forest became louder. On the mother tree, a branch broke and fell to the ground, making a sound. Lei Laosi suddenly jumped up. Oh. He glanced around nervously, but he didn't find anyone. Qin Yi rubbed his glabella helplessly. It's just a broken branch. It's not a big deal. Fourth brother, you're too tense. Lei Laosi looked over and scratched his head awkwardly. I see. I thought. He sighed, unable to hide his disappointment. Just now, he thought that His Highness had come out. Qin Yi also knew that Lei Laosi was too worried about Chu Luiyue, so he said gently, rest for a while first. However, Lei Laosi shook his head and refused. Seeing his determined expression, Qin Yi didn't persuade him anymore. The forest quietened down again. Old thing, have you not moved for too long that your limbs aren't nimble? With that commotion just now, do you want the entire Dahuang swamp to know that you're here? Big Bao's voice was filled with disdain. The elder coughed. That was an accident. Who told you two to keep quarreling? It's more important to find the girl first. That's right. We can only come out during the night of the red moon once a month. Other than that, we don't know what happens in the outside world. The time we can freely move around outside is at most 4 hours. This is a rare opportunity, so we have to hurry up." The few of them stopped quarreling and rushed down together. "It seems like that thing's seal broke by itself. Look at this place. How much has it ruined? It's been so many years. That seal should have rotted long ago. It's already a miracle that it can last until today. However, I'm curious, could it be that the girl calculated the time long ago and specially came at this time? It's not impossible. But she's really gutsy to barge in here. I guess she should have broken through again, right? Isn't that obvious? Back then the space below seems to be locked up by that thing? Girl is really there. I'll go check it out first. Get out of my way. What's there to quarrel about? Do the two of you want to compete with me in terms of looks? Girl has always liked me the most. Alright, I'm going. Damn pervert, you're shameless." Chu Luiyue was focused on cultivating. After breaking through to the intermediate stage 5, she intentionally slowed down the speed of absorbing energy. There was a gap between the intermediate stage and the peak stage, and she had to seriously fill it to ensure that it was solid. Even though Chu Luiyue wanted to improve her skills as soon as possible, she wouldn't blindly do something radical. Suddenly her ears twitched. Why did it sound like someone was talking? She opened her eyes and looked up subconsciously. The green halo almost completely blocked her vision, and the space above was dark. She couldn't see anything clearly. It didn't seem any different from before. "Liu, what's wrong?" Taizu asked curiously. Chu Luiyue pointed up. "Taizu, did you hear someone talking?" "No." Taizu looked up curiously. "How could there be someone here?" "Did you hear wrongly?" Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. At this time, it was indeed unlikely that someone would come here. Maybe she really heard wrongly. She retracted her gaze and was about to continue cultivating when she suddenly heard a call. "Girl, digression, 12 o'clock, tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network." Chapter 770. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to have been touched by something. She looked up again. Although she still couldn't see anything clearly, she had an inexplicable feeling that she was being watched. That voice was definitely not her hallucination. That voice was calling her, and it sounded very intimate. However, that voice and tone were very unfamiliar. She seemed to have never heard it before. But somehow it seemed vaguely familiar. There weren't many people who could call her that, and those who had the ability to reach here were even fewer. Who was it? The moment Chu Luiyue looked up, the three people who were originally filled with anticipation and joy were all stunned. It's been a few years. How did this girl's appearance change so much? And she looks much younger? Lan Xiao, who was at the front, crossed his arms and touched his chin with one hand as he said in a daze. He only knew that when one cultivated to a certain level they would never age. But that depended on their age. If a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old crossed that threshold at the same time, there would naturally be a huge difference. Other than that, he had never heard of anyone who could rejuvenate themselves. "Lan Xiao, your eyesight isn't as good as mine. That girl isn't a girl." Diwu Zhangzi stroked his white beard and chuckled. "You haven't seen that girl for a few years and you actually forgot what she looks like? Let's see what you can say when she finds out." If it were any other time, Lan Zhan would definitely refute him. But at this moment he couldn't care less. His eyes were staring straight at the girl below, and his brows were slightly furrowed. That's not right. He naturally remembered what the girl looked like, and logically speaking he definitely wouldn't mistake her. But this girl, that's the girl. Dugu Mabao, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Although his tone was cold because his voice was too similar to a baby's, it sounded a little out of place, as if a child was pretending to be an adult. Lan Xiao and Diwu Zhangzi both fell silent for a moment. Although her appearance is different, the aura of this soul is definitely the same. Although Dugu Mabao had a bad temper, he had always been very accurate in this aspect. Since even he had said so, then it must be true. Diwu Zhangzi widened his eyes in shock and lowered his head to take a closer look. However, the girl had already retracted her gaze. From their position they could only see the top of her head. No wonder. When I first saw her, I subconsciously thought that she was a girl. I wasn't mistaken. Lan Xiao heaved a sigh of relief and glanced at Diwu Zhangzi. "I didn't recognize her, but you?" Diwu Zhangzi's face flushed red and he was somewhat embarrassed. This isn't entirely my fault. Who would have thought that this lass would actually change her appearance? This, Everything was fine, how did it end up like this? Diwu Zhang's question was also what the other two wanted to know. Lan Xiao pondered seriously for a moment. Could it be that the little girl dislikes her appearance for not being beautiful enough? Was that why he changed his face? Dugu Mabao looked at him as if he was an idiot. Damn pervert, do you think everyone is like you? You can change your face as you wish, but can this girl do the same? Besides, who in this world would think that her previous face wasn't beautiful enough? Lan Xiao didn't mind being called a damn pervert. Instead, he deeply agreed with the latter sentence. That's true. If it weren't for the fact that he doted on this girl, he would have already taken her face. That was really a rare beauty in this world. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and there was some admiration in his eyes. However, her current appearance is still a little young and inexperienced. When she grows up, she won't lose to the past at all. Speaking of which, why is she tormenting herself like this? Dugu Mabao's face darkened. Not only did she change her face, but her body has also changed. These words made the other two's faces change slightly. To them, changing one's appearance was nothing much. However, it was different after changing her body. One must know that to a cultivator, the physical body was extremely important. Dantian, core of essence, Yuan Meridian. Once the physical body was abandoned, all these would be abandoned too. Moreover, that girl had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian. The three of them fell into a short silence. Previously, they relied on their perception of the girl's soul. However, they didn't expect that other than this soul, the rest of the girl's body had been replaced. What exactly was going on? Do you think that the girl hasn't come for these few years? Could it be that she didn't forget, but something happened? Diwu Zhangzi said slowly. They had never thought of this possibility before. The girl was smart and cunning, and she was extremely talented and strong. Back then she could still exchange a few blows with them. How could something have happened? From the bottom of their hearts, they didn't want to believe this guess. However, if this was true, what exactly happened to cause her to change her body and start all over again? Diwu Zhangzi said, let's wait first. It seems that the girl is now at odds with that Tutian baby. It won't be too late to ask her when she comes out. Dugu Mabao clenched his fists and his body was filled with killing intent. Lan Zhao's eyebrows twitched. He was afraid that he would make a scene now and start a massacre. He quickly said, hey Big Bao. Calm down. The girl hasn't come out yet. We'll talk about everything after we find out. What's the use of getting angry now? Dugu Mabao gritted his teeth and said word by word, where the hell did that Rong Xiu kid go? His Highness the Holy Sun, who was reading files at his desk, suddenly sneezed. He put down the brush in his hand, rubbed his eyebrows and chuckled. Seems like someone is thinking about me. He paused for a moment and finished reading all the files in front of him. Then he got up and walked to the window. A snow-white figure suddenly flew down from the sky at high speed. The soldiers who were standing guard outside the hall all looked up in surprise. How long had it been? Why did His Highness's devil beast look like it had become stronger again? Shue Shue swept across the empty space in front of the hall, and a layer of frost actually condensed on the ground. Its figure had already entered the hall and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. This time Shue Shue still chose to break the window and enter. Fortunately, the hall was spacious enough, and the items used were all top-notch, so there was no need to worry about them being damaged. Shue Shue leaped into the room. Rong Xiu looked at it and his thin lips curved up. You sure know how to pick the right time. Shue Shue had already guessed what its master wanted it to do. It wagged its tail happily and looked at Rong Xiu with its icy blue eyes. After waiting for a while, Rong Xiu's smile deepened. You can go first. I planned to bring Shue Shue along later, but it seems like I can't wait anymore. Shue Shue was very excited and ran out. Its roar shook the sky. It wasn't hard to tell how happy it was. Rong Xiu looked at its rapidly disappearing figure and raised his eyebrows. Even he felt a headache from the anger of those few people. Let Shue Shue go first. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 771. At this moment, Shue Shue had no idea that it had been sold by its master. It was overjoyed as it tore through space and plunged into it. It headed straight for Dahuang Swamp. After a while, Rong Xiu retracted his gaze. After pondering for a moment, he pushed the door open and walked out. Greetings, Your Highness. Seeing him come out, the soldiers outside the door immediately bowed respectfully. You may rise. Rong Xiu's expression had returned to calmness, and no one could tell that he was angry. 36 respected Elder Ming hasn't returned yet? Not yet, Your Highness. Rong Xiao narrowed his eyes slightly. Calculating the time, he had been gone for quite some time. According to 36 respected Elder Ming's temper, he shouldn't have wasted so much time with the Ming division. He didn't intend to get involved in this. After all, the Ming division was too difficult to deal with. But now he had to rush to Dahuang Swamp as soon as possible. Then he had to find 36 respected Elder Ming to discuss this matter. He thought for a moment, then walked forward. In the dim space, the surroundings were silent. However, Chu Liwei felt as if someone was whispering in her ear. Although she couldn't hear it clearly, it was still there. Only after a long time had passed did it gradually quiet down. She glanced at Taizu without batting an eyelid, but didn't see any abnormality in his expression. It seemed that Taizu really didn't hear anything. Strange, Chu Liwei lowered her eyes and thought to herself. Could it be that someone deliberately let me hear these voices? But the other party doesn't seem to have any ill intentions, and even, there's some undisguised joy in doting. It's as if they were very familiar with each other. Chu Liwei thought for a while but still came up with nothing. In the end, she closed her eyes, put away her thoughts, and continued to devour the two Tian babies' power. Bang! A crisp and soft sound was heard. Another fragment fell from the heaven-wrecking holy seed. Then it flew silently toward Chu Liwei and melted into the water screen, turning into a water droplet and entering her body. Seeing this scene, the three of them were all stunned. Even the furious Dugu Mabao was stunned. He stopped scolding Rong Xiao halfway. What is this girl doing? That layer of crystal was formed after the two Tian babies swallowed thousands of years of power. It was specially used to protect itself before it matured. She actually swallowed it just like that? Lan Xiao clicked his tongue. I didn't expect that the lass would become younger, and her ability would also increase. See, I told you that you can't just dig it out and give it to her, right? Now the little girl can deal with it herself. Such top-notch existences usually had spirituality. It wasn't impossible to force it to submit, but if it carried unwillingness and anger, there would eventually be hidden dangers. Only by completely suppressing it and making it submit to him could it truly be considered his own. In that case, he wouldn't have to worry about using it in the future. Although the little girl was only gnawing on small pieces, it was still extremely outstanding. As long as there was enough time, she would definitely be able to rely on her own ability to take down the two Tian baby. Diwu Zhangze was secretly amazed. What is that water curtain? Can you guys see it? The lass is only a stage 5 warrior now, but with that water curtain she can actually go against the two Tian baby and even have the upper hand. Lan Xiao looked over, shook his head and said very honestly, I can't see it. Dugu Mabao held back for a long time before saying unwillingly, I can't see it. The other two looked at him in surprise. Debao, you've been roaming the continent for many years and have seen more rare treasures than the two of us combined. There's actually something that you can't see the origin of? He had a fiery temper and was proud and stubborn. It wasn't easy for him to admit it. Dugu Mabao waved his hand in annoyance. It's so far away and there's the two Tian babies' divine realm blocking it. What can you see? When the lass finishes dealing with the two Tian baby, can't she just say it herself? No matter what, it's not an ordinary item. Shangguan Wan and the rest finally returned to Xiling after passing through several teleportation portals. The Pingliang Square was as noisy as usual. Suddenly, the largest teleportation portal in the middle started rotating slowly. Everyone turned to look at him, their faces filled with shock. Look, the teleportation portal is actually moving. Could it be that the third princess and the rest are coming back? It can't be, right? Didn't they just leave not long ago? Plus the time spent on the journey back and forth. They can't be coming back right after reaching Dahuang Swamp, right? But that teleportation portal is exclusively for them. Ever since they left, it hasn't been moved. Could it be that someone dares to use it without permission? Isn't that someone tired of living? While everyone was discussing, the surrounding black guards had already reacted quickly. The people on Pingliang Square were all chased down. The black guards surrounded the area, and the transportation array in the middle was also surrounded in a circle. The cold and stern black cavalry was ready for battle. It was as if they were welcoming a big shot. Seeing this scene, what else could the crowd not understand? To be able to make the black cavalry like this, the third princess and the rest must be back. In the face of such a serious aura, many people were silent. However, their eyes were still fixed on the center. Obviously, everyone wanted to see the results of the third princess leading the army to Dahuang Swamp to help His Majesty get the medicine. Soon, Several figures appeared on the teleportation portal. Who else could it be but the third Princess Shangguanguan? Standing beside her was Jiang Yuqing. The surrounding black cavalry immediately knelt down to welcome her. Welcome back, third princess. The onlookers naturally had to bow as well. In an instant, a large number of people knelt down in all directions. Rise, Shangguanguan said. Everyone stood up one after another. However, when they saw Shangguanguan's appearance clearly, many people were surprised. Shangguanguan's face was covered with a veil? Moreover, she was wearing a cloak with the hood on her head, almost covering half of her face. In such a dress, everyone could only see a pair of eyes and the rest was tightly covered. Although it was winter at this time because it was almost spring, it was not that cold. It was really a little strange for Shangguanguan to be dressed like this. However, ordinary people were naturally not qualified to ask these questions. A young man stepped forward. He seemed to be the general of the Black Cavalry. The last General Lu Shan greets the third princess. Eldest young master. Deputy General. Shangguanguan did not want to stay here any longer, so she directly said, all the Black Cavalry soldiers and disciples of various sects have worked very hard on this trip. Go back and rest. In addition, I have something important to discuss with the court officials. Pass down the order. All the major sect leaders and aristocratic family heads are to go to the palace immediately. Although Lu Shan was confused, he immediately said, yes. Digression. In the morning, the editor suddenly said that the names of the articles could not be punctuated, so everyone began to change the names. It was a chaotic morning. The meeting continued at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from AI Network. Chapter 772. No one expected their return to be so sudden and so dull. Back then, the third princess led 1,000 black cavalry and several disciples from various sects to Dahuang Swamp. They had a powerful lineup and a magnificent momentum. But now, this was simply too surprising. Lu Shan and the others were also very puzzled. According to the plan, the third princess and the others should be back in about a month. But how long had it been? Moreover, logically speaking, they should have notified them before they came back. But they didn't receive any news at all. If they hadn't seen the teleportation array start to move, they wouldn't have known that they were back. Shangguanguan's face was covered with scars and couldn't be completely covered with a veil. Helplessly, she could only cover it with a hood. Although it looked a little strange, it could be completely covered. How many pairs of eyes in West Hill were watching her? Once her disfigured appearance was seen by others, who knew what kind of storm it would cause. Therefore, even if this appearance would cause people to speculate and discuss, she still insisted on it. She wanted to take a carriage back to the palace, but they came back too suddenly and it was definitely too late now. After giving instructions, Shangguanguan directly lifted her feet and walked forward. Jiang Yuqing was half a step behind her and walked with her. After a short moment of silence, the remaining black guards and disciples of various sects also dispersed. This scene was actually very awkward. The onlookers looked at each other. What's going on? Just like that? I thought that we would come back in glory. This is different from what I expected. Don't you see that the Black Cavalry has lost a lot of people? And the disciples of those sects seem to have lost a lot. It seems to be true. It seems that there are about 300 to 400 Black Cavalry who didn't come back. Hiss, the casualties in this trip to Dahuang Swamp are so heavy. It was originally a dangerous place, so this result is normal, right? In the past, when Vice Admiral Mu led the army, more than half of them were killed or injured. But at that time, it was a rebellion in Dahuang Swamp. Now that Dahuang Swamp has been pacified, isn't it a little strange? The third princess also felt a little strange when she saw this. But since it was so tragic, it should be because they had seized a lot of medicinal herbs that His Majesty needed, right? Everyone discussed in low voices. All sorts of voices kept entering Shangguanguan's ears. Anger surged in her chest and all the blood in her body rushed to her head. Her face under the veil was torn apart again because of her ferocious expression. This made her even more annoyed. Those words were like invisible slaps that ruthlessly slapped her face. She quickened her pace. Mu Qinghe did not leave with them. Instead, she stayed behind to take care of the Black Cavalry. After Lu San respectfully sent off Shangguanguan and the others, he looked at Mu Qinghe in confusion. He was a little anxious. Deputy General, why didn't you inform us that you were coming back this time? This welcome is too hasty. Mu Qinghe shook her head. I've kept this matter in mind, so I didn't have time to inform you. It's fine. Immediately send people to bring the injured black cavalry back to recuperate. In addition, Tian Zhuang and the others will report the casualties to you. I'll leave them to you to deal with the aftermath. Lu San's heart sank when he heard this. The last general understands. He looked up and quickly scanned the surroundings. He realized that the number of casualties might be much higher than he had expected. His mood became heavier. Da Huang Swamp was indeed full of danger, but ever since Mu Qinghe led the troops to quell the rebellion a few years ago, it had actually become much better. Logically speaking, such a situation shouldn't have happened. However, he didn't dare to ask too much and could only follow Mu Qinghe's instructions. As for the disciples of the other sects, the situation wasn't any better. They were different from the Black Cavalry. The Black Cavalry was an army, and their duty was to obey. However, the relationship between the various sects and the Tianling royal family wasn't completely submissive. They respected the Tianling royal family, and at the same time the Tianling royal family also respected them. Those who could enter these sects were undoubtedly geniuses. Moreover, those who were selected to go to Da Huang Swamp this time were 1 in 100 and were extremely outstanding. Now that they were dead and injured, it was a huge loss to the various sections. Why are there only 3 people from the Purple Shao Sword sect? Didn't they go with 10 people when they went? They're the ones who suffered the most losses, right? The other sects also suffered casualties, but none of them are like them, I think. Wait, where are the people from the Chongshu Pavilion? Why haven't they appeared yet? As soon as this was said, everyone fell silent for a moment. Countless gazes quickly scanned the scene, but they didn't see anyone from the Chongshu Pavilion. Only 3 people went to the Chongshu Pavilion. In addition, Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou had recently become famous, so they were especially eye-catching. But now, not a single one of them had appeared. Could it be that the people from the Chongshu Pavilion are all? Someone in the crowd softly said half a sentence. He didn't say the rest, but everyone knew what he meant. Everyone's expression became complicated and subtle, and their eyes were all different. It wasn't easy for the Chongshu Pavilion to produce 2 top geniuses. Were they really going to die? Without Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou, the Chongshu Pavilion situation would definitely become more difficult in the future. Spring Breeze Restaurant. In the private room, Shui Lu and Jian Fengqi were sitting facing each other by the window. Shui Lu hugged the pipa but didn't play it. She only looked at Jian Fengqi opposite her and asked, "So, everything went smoothly? Of course, there won't be any problems with me taking action personally." Jian Fengqi leaned lazily against the back of the chair, his sword-like eyebrows slightly raised with undisguised arrogance. Shui Lu sneered. "Those 2 aren't in West Hill, of course it's more convenient for you to do things." Jian Fengqi didn't deny it either. When his father urged him to go to Da Huang Swamp, he refused to go no matter what and insisted on staying in West Hill. Wasn't that all for this? Anyway, things are progressing well now. Next, we just need to... Suddenly, there was a commotion on the street outside the window. Jian Fengqi immediately fell silent. Shui Lu opened the window and looked down. A trace of shock flashed across her face. The Black Cavalry? Jian Fengqi sensed that something was wrong, so he went over to take a look. Then he frowned. What? Shangguanwan is back. On the wide street, the Black Cavalry was on alert on both sides. A few figures were coming from the middle. The person in front was wearing a cloak and a veil, but Jian Fengqi recognized her at first glance. She was Shangguanwan. And beside her was Jiang Yuqing. There were also a few servants following behind the 2 of them, all of them maintaining a distance that was neither too close nor too far. Shouldn't they be back in a month or so? Why would they? Shui Lu asked in confusion. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes and said, "She's back after finding medicine for His Majesty. It should be a big celebration. Why is she so timid?" With that, he flicked his finger. "I'd like to see what she's feeling so guilty about, hiding it so well." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 773. Wait. As soon as Jian Fengqi moved, Shui Lu grabbed his wrist before his force could fly out. Because of this distraction, he was unable to launch his attack. Jian Fengqi glanced at her with dissatisfaction. "Little Lu, why are you stopping me? Maybe there's a shocking secret hidden under that veil." He knew Shangguanwan too well. Shangguanwan had always valued her appearance very much. She also liked to dress herself up perfectly to show off to the world and win praise. She was very particular about her makeup and hair accessories at all times. She didn't allow any mistakes to be made. Today she was wearing a veil for the first time. She even wore a hood to cover herself up tightly. It would be strange if there wasn't something fishy going on. She rushed back from Da Huang Swamp in such a hurry without any news beforehand. It was obvious that she had made a sudden decision. Under such circumstances, her actions were even more intriguing. Shui Lu glared at him and flung his wrist away. If I didn't stop you, did you really intend to make things difficult for her in public? Are all those black cavalry soldiers useless? If you make a move 1 second ago, they might come knocking on your door the next second. Jian Fengqi coughed, retreated, and smiled eagerly in a fawning manner. I was just joking. Little Lu, don't be angry. There's no need to be angry over someone like her, right? Shui Lu also understood that Jian Fengqi knew the severity of the matter, so she didn't continue to say anything. She turned around and saw that Shangguan Wan and the rest had already left quickly. She was a little suspicious. Why do they look like they're in a hurry? Are they in a hurry to return to the palace? Jian Fengqi rubbed his chin. I knew that there must be a shameful secret hidden under that veil. The palace is her territory. Of course she's in a hurry to return. Fortunately, I've already done what I need to do. If Shangguan Wan had returned earlier, he might have been in trouble. Thinking of this, Shui Lu heaved a sigh of relief. You've handled this matter well. Jian Fengqi had a bright smile on his face, and he was carefree and unrestrained. Little Lu has always been reluctant to praise me. Today is a rare occasion. Shui Lu couldn't be bothered with him and changed the topic. Since they're back, the rest of the troops should be back too, right? Jian Fengqi's eyes flickered. This meant that Mu Hongyu and Chu Luiyue should be behind them. He glanced outside a few more times, only to see that after Shangguan Wan and the rest left, no one followed them. Just when the two of them were puzzled, a voice came from outside the window. Haven't you heard? 2. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged and focused on her cultivation. Her aura continued to grow stronger. B. Diwu Zhangze finally spoke. We don't know how long it'll take for the girl to come out. Lan Xiao and Dugu Mabao realized this too. Lan Xiao was a little worried. But if we don't see the girl today, we'll have to wait another month. The night of the Crimson Moon only happened once a month. Dugu Mabao turned and left. So be it. We've waited for a few years. Why should we be afraid of a month? The other two looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. He had always been the one who stuck to the girl the most. Now he was willing to be the first to leave? Diwu Zhangze followed and asked. You're really not going to wait any longer? Dugu Mabao said coldly. If we wait any longer, will she see us? Diwu Zhangze was speechless. The girl was trapped in there. Of course she couldn't see them. She's cultivating. Let her cultivate in peace. As for meeting, she's already here. What difference does it make if we meet earlier or later? Based on her current strength, she would definitely need a month to completely devour the two Tian baby. What's the hurry? Big Bao is right. Lan Xiao nodded in agreement and followed. Staying up late is bad for the skin. I have to go back and catch up on sleep. The remaining two quieted down. A moment later. You're a living dead. Why do you need to catch up on sleep? Lan Xiao, I'll ask you again seriously. Are you sick? Lan Xiao felt sorry for himself and was very resentful. He secretly thought that these two didn't know how to appreciate his beauty. What do you know? The girl likes beautiful people. So I can understand. You two, one young and one old. No matter how hard you work, you can't compare to me. What's there to compete for? Diwu Zhangze reminded objectively. Have you forgotten Rong Xiu? You've changed so many faces, but none of them can compare to him. The beautiful fantasy in Lan Zhao's head was instantly shattered. He gritted his teeth and cursed. Damn it. Dugu Mabao suddenly sneered. Speak of the devil. Just as he was thinking about it, it came. His figure flashed and he quickly rushed up. It was the last moment before dawn, and the forest was dark. The rustling wind blew past and quickly disappeared. Not long later, Red Moon Desert. Suddenly, a black spatial crack appeared in the void. Immediately, a snow-white figure jumped out from it. Shue Shue shook its body and a lot of frost fell. Under the red moonlight in the night sky, it reflected a faint light. It looked around, sniffed, and began to search for Chu Luiyue. It seemed to be Russell. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from below. Shue Shue looked down. It saw that there seemed to be something moving under the undulating sand dunes. It blinked, then as if it suddenly thought of something, it looked up. A red moon was hanging high in the black night sky. A hint of fear flashed across Shue Shue's eyes. Without a second thought, it turned around and ran. What a coincidence. But before it could run out, it heard a soft and gentle voice. Little snowflake, long time no see. Why are you running? Shue Shue didn't even turn its head, and its claws dug even harder. However, not only did it not run forward, but its body kept moving backward, and it even fell to the ground. When it was pressed on the cold sand, Shue Shue finally realized that it was still too inexperienced. It made a prompt decision, and it was very decisive. It lay down obediently. It even wagged its tail to express its joy. Little snowflake has become smarter after not seeing you for a few years. The voice came closer, as if the person was right beside its ear. Shue Shue's body stiffened, and it didn't dare to move. It whimpered softly, and its pair of ice-blue eyes were watery, looking very docile and cute. A wise man submits to circumstances. A moment later, a baby-like voice sounded coldly. Where's your master? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 774. Where's your master? Shue Shue was stunned for a moment when she heard this, but she quickly reacted. His master's calm and indifferent eyes immediately appeared in his mind. Shue Shue slowly widened its eyes. No wonder. No wonder master didn't agree to it when it wanted to come, but he suddenly allowed it. It naively thought that it was because it had been cultivating diligently recently and increased its strength. It didn't expect. It had been betrayed by its master. Master must have known that it was the night of the crimson moon, so he deliberately let it come. And from the looks of it, they weren't in a good mood now. Was this the reason why master let it come first? Shue Shue was heartbroken and regretful. It thought to itself that it was foolish to form a contract with him back then. So what if it was a divine beast? It was still betrayed, wasn't it? Shue Shue lowered its head dejectedly, looking like it had nothing to live for. Seeing its expression, Dugu Mabao understood what was going on. It couldn't help but sneer. He's really straightforward. He sent you here and let you take the blame? Lan Xiao touched his face and his voice became gentler. What's the use of being too good-looking? He has a bad heart. That girl must be blind to like him. Dugu Mabao was silent for a moment, and its voice became colder. Who are you calling blind? Lan Xiao. What did I say? I didn't say anything. Diwu, little Shue Shue is quite pitiful. It has already taken the blame a few times. Be gentler this time. Diwu Zhangzi said faintly. Do you think it's my turn to do anything? Could they stop Dugu Mabao from doing anything he wanted? Shue Shue thought that it had a chance of survival when it heard Lan Xiao pleading for it, but Diwu Zhangzi's words made it lose all hope. It lowered its head pitifully, and its head was pressed against its paws. It was very uneasy. After a moment, Dugu Mabao said, Come here. Mystic Forest. The long night passed. A layer of bright light gradually lit up the sky, plating the clouds with a layer of gold. This added a bit of warmth to the originally lonely and desolate Mystic Forest. However, the few people in the forest didn't feel better, because the mother tree in front of them still did not move. As for Chu Luiyue, he was nowhere to be found. He had no intention of coming out. Even Qini didn't know how long he had to wait. At this moment, they were completely unaware of what had happened in the Mirror Lake and the Red Moon Desert. The West Hill. After the Black Cavalry escorted Shangguan Wan, Jiang Yuqing, and the others away, someone said something that immediately caused the whole street to boil. Are you serious? There were a total of 3 disciples from the Chongshu Pavilion, including Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou. Logically speaking, they should have no problem protecting themselves. How could they all die? Where did you hear this news from? Of course it's real. When the third princess and the others came back, I was at Pingliang Plaza. The Black Cavalry and the sect disciples had all returned. Only the Chongshu Pavilion was empty. If he's not dead, then what is? I saw it too. They really didn't come back. That's impossible. So many people who were weaker than them came back alive. Who can be sure about such things? About 300 to 400 people from the Black Cavalry died. The 3 disciples from the Chongshu Pavilion probably acted together and were completely annihilated. This time the Chongshu Pavilion really suffered a huge loss. That's right. There was just a slight improvement, and now Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou are gone. What a pity. Just as the crowd was discussing fervently, a figure suddenly jumped down from upstairs and directly jumped in front of the few people who were talking. He then grabbed the collar of the man who spoke first. What did you just say? The man who spoke was caught off guard and was easily grabbed by the person. His collar was tightly gripped and he almost couldn't breathe. "Who are you?" He was enraged and instinctively wanted to curse out loud. However, when he took a closer look, he got a shock. Young Master Jian? Many people in Shilin City recognized Jian Fengqi's face. "Young Master Jian, let's talk nicely." Jian Fengqi stared at him and asked word by word, "I'm asking you, who did you say died?" The man was panicking. He was afraid that Jian Fengqi would twist his neck and break his neck. He hurriedly said, It's those people from the Chongshu Pavilion?" "I'm not sure." "Young Master Jian, please spare my life. The people from the major sects have already gone back. If you want to know, you can ask them." Jian Fengqi pushed him away, went on his toes and swiftly headed for Pingliang Square. According to the time, there should still be many people who hadn't gone too far from Pingliang Square. The man who was pushed away struggled to get up and looked in the direction Jian Fengqi left, still in shock. The crowd around them also quieted down because of this. Someone couldn't help but murmur, "Why does the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain care so much about what happened at the Chongshu Pavilion? I heard that Dragon Teeth Mountain and Chongshu Pavilion have a good relationship. I wonder how the people of Chongshu Pavilion will react when they hear this news." Upstairs, Shui Lu looked out of the window. Jian Fengqi's figure quickly disappeared from her sight. Her willowy eyebrows furrowed slightly. "This time, I'm afraid things are going to get out of hand." Jian Fengqi moved quickly and soon bumped into Zhu Hong and the others who were on their way back. At a glance, they were all injured and their auras were extremely weak. Jian Fengqi's heart skipped a beat. "Zhu Hong." Zhu Hong looked up. "Young master." Jian Fengqi quickly went to them and asked anxiously, "What's going on at the Chongshu Pavilion?" Digression. The title of the book should be changed in the next 2 days. Don't take it off the shelves just because it's unfamiliar to you. You must keep me here. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 775. Seeing how anxious he was, Zhu Hong hurriedly said, "Young master, don't worry. It's a long story about the people from the Chongshu Pavilion." Seeing Zhu Hong's reaction, Jian Fengqi felt a little relieved. Things might be different from what those people were saying. Zhu Hong took a deep breath. "Young master, let's go back first. It's not convenient here. On the streets, anything they said could be overheard by someone with ulterior motives." Although Jian Fengqi was anxious, he could only suppress it. Then he glanced at the few people and frowned slightly. "Where's Hongyu?" Zhu Hong pursed his lips. "She's with the people from the Chongshu Pavilion." Jian Fengqi's heart sank. "Young master, don't worry. They're fine now." Zhu Hong saw that his expression was not right and quickly added. Jian Fengqi was even more confused. Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu and the others did not come back with the main group, but Zhu Hong said that they were fine. What in the world had happened? Countless questions surfaced in his mind, but Jian Fengqi suppressed them and looked at them again. These people were all injured to varying degrees. Zhu Hong was still fine, but the others could barely stand. "Let's go back to Dragon Teeth Mountain first." Dragon Teeth Mountain. As soon as the seriously injured people returned, they were immediately sent for treatment and recuperation. Zhu Hong was the only one left. He was in good health and was the leader, so he naturally had to stay. After they returned to the mountain, Jian Shai heard the news and immediately rushed over. Zhu Hong explained the ins and outs of the matter to Jian Shai and Jian Fengqi in detail. "This time, it's all thanks to Miss Chu's help that we could come back safely. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable." After that, the room fell into silence. The father and son's expressions were very solemn and serious. After a while, Jian Shai said, "So now Chu Luiyue is missing, and the rest of the people are still in the mystic forest looking for her whereabouts?" Zhu Hong nodded. "Originally, we also wanted to stay and help, but considering that our people were all injured, even if we stayed, we might not be able to help much. We might even become a burden to everyone, so in the end we chose to come back with the main group." Jian Shai heaved a long sigh. "That's right. It's only right that you do this. In a place like the Great Desolate Swamp, unless one was a top-notch expert, anyone could become trouble for others. Not to mention the injured ones." Jian Fengqi suddenly said, "Are you saying that Snapper and Chu Luiyue have been working together since the beginning?" "Yes." At that time, the few of them had taken the lead and headed into the depths of the forest, just in time to avoid that accident. Because of that, none of them were injured when we met again. Jian Fengqi had mixed feelings. Mu Hongyu and Chu Luiyue were very close, so it was normal for them to work together. I just don't know what the current situation is like. Master, young master, don't worry. With Qin Yi and Lei Laosi around, nothing should happen to Snapper and the rest. Zhu Hong was actually a little worried, but he could only place his hopes on Qin Yi and the rest now. As for Chu Luiyue, he didn't dare to mention it again. The possibility of her surviving was simply too small. Jian Shai suddenly asked, "The Qin Yi and Lei Laosi you're talking about? Who exactly are they? Have they really been staying in the mystic forest to protect that legendary fiend?" Zhu Hong explained, "The two of them are very strong. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, they're definitely top-notch experts, but we don't know the two of them. However, they did seem to have stayed in the mystic forest for a very long time. As for the one they were protecting, to be precise, it was a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. After that, it successfully broke through and finally became a red-tailed phoenix." 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The father and son both exclaimed in shock. Isn't that the same as the fiend that the princess had a contract with? If it were any other 9th-grade fiend, they definitely wouldn't have such a huge reaction. However, it just had to be a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. For a moment, the few of them didn't speak. After a long while, Jian Fengqi muttered softly, "What a coincidence. It's actually Lu Yu who contracted that 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Oh no, it's the red-tailed phoenix." Chu Luiyue originally looked similar to the princess, and now that she contracted this fiend, it made one's imagination run wild. It's a pity that she's nowhere to be found now, and I don't know if I can still find her. If she comes back in the end, she definitely won't be able to avoid Shangguan making things difficult for her. Thinking about Shangguan, Jian Fengqi suddenly felt energized. "Alright, house, the third princess?" Zhu Hong was dazed for a moment as if he didn't quite understand what Jian Fengqi was asking. Jian Fengqi rephrased his question. "Is there something wrong with her body or her face?" Zhu Hong shook his head. "I don't know." Back then, the ones standing near Shangguan were Jiang Yuqing, Mu Qinghe, and the rest. In addition, she quickly covered herself up tightly afterward, so even fewer people saw that her face was injured. Zhu Hong and the rest's attention was on Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu, and the rest, so they naturally didn't know anything about this. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. "Master, the third princess has summoned all the people from the various sects and families to the palace to discuss important matters. The palace servants are already waiting outside." Jian Shai stood up. "Zhu Hong, you should go back and recuperate first. As for Hongyu and the rest, you don't have to worry too much. She's my disciple. If anything happens to her, I'll still be there as her master." Hearing him say this, Zhu Hong instantly heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like the master has made preparations. "I'll go to the palace to take a look first. Fengqi, go back and make a trip to the Chongshu Pavilion and tell them to relax first. I wonder how the rumors outside have spread now." Jian Fengqi actually wanted to go to the palace very much, but after hearing this he changed his mind. "I know. Don't worry." Jian Shai turned and left. Not long after, Jian Fengqi set off for the Chongshu Pavilion. Just as Jian Shai said, all kinds of news had spread throughout the entire Xiling city in a short period of time. The sudden return of Shangguan and the rest shocked everyone. In addition, the series of strange reactions they had after returning caused many speculations. The news that none of the Chongshu Pavilion disciples returned spread to countless people's ears as if it had grown wings. Everyone had different reactions, both openly and secretly. When Jian Fengqi rushed to the Chongshu Pavilion, Yu Qisong had already followed the palace servants to the palace. Tianling Palace. Shangguan returned to Huayang Palace and chased everyone out. She took off her cloak, sat in front of the bronze mirror, and carefully took off her veil. A face covered in scars and badly mutilated appeared in the bronze mirror. Shangguan stared at the face in the mirror as blood surged between her teeth. Thinking of how she still had to meet those people later, she suppressed the anger in her heart and took out a box of cream from the cabinet beside her. She carefully dipped it in and applied it to her face. Just as the cream touched her face, she instantly felt a burning pain. She finally couldn't help but cry out in pain. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 776. Hearing her scream, Chani, who was waiting outside, was startled and immediately asked, "What happened?" She immediately asked, "Your Highness, what's wrong? You're not allowed to come in." Shangguan immediately shouted. "Yes." Chani quickly replied with a slight frown. When Her Highness returned, she hid herself very well. Chani had already vaguely guessed something. Now, it seemed like she was most likely right. How did she end up like this after going to Dahuang Swamp? Chani looked up at the palace servants standing in the courtyard with a cold gaze. When everyone heard Shangguan scream, they knew something was wrong. Sensing Chan Yi's dangerous gaze, they lowered their eyes and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. All of you may leave. Yes. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly left as if they had been pardoned. After they left, Chan Yi looked at the tightly shut door again. The intense burning sensation caused Shangguan's mind to go blank. She hurriedly looked at the bronze mirror, only to see that the wound on her face, which she had just applied the cream on, was faintly black. It was as if she had been scalded. The curled skin and flesh looked as if it had been burned by flames. It was slightly curled and slightly charred. Even though it was only a small patch, it was very obvious. So the pain just now was because I was really burned. Shangguan's face was filled with shock. What's going on? The cream was clearly a superior medicine for treating scars. How did it end up like this? She hurriedly looked at the box in her hand. That's right. This is the cream. It wasn't that she hadn't used it before. Occasionally, when she bumped into something and got a scar, she would recover quickly with this. But now, Shangguan threw the cream to the side and leaned closer to the bronze mirror. Looking at the wound on her face, she was filled with worry. In order to retrieve the dancing lotus as soon as possible, she had sent people to gather the people from the various sects and aristocratic families the moment she returned. She wanted to use the cream to heal the wound on her face slightly so that she could be seen. However, she didn't expect that not only did it not heal, but it also ended up like this. Shangguan was very scared. Her body trembled slightly and her lips were pale. If she really couldn't recover her looks, she didn't dare to use the cream anymore, but what else could she use? Shangguan sat in front of the bronze mirror for a long time, conflicted and in pain. This continued until Chan Yi knocked on the door again. Your Highness, all the sect leaders and patriarchs are about to reach Minghua Palace. Do you want me to help you with your grooming? Shangguan suddenly came back to her senses. Only then did she realize that she had not done anything for such a long time. Now that she was in such a sorry state, if others were to see her, they would definitely mock her. She gritted her teeth. That's not necessary. Bengong will go to the hot springs. There was hot spring water behind Huayang Palace. Yes. Chani didn't dare to ask any more questions and respectfully agreed. Shangguan walked to the back alone, opened the side door and entered the hot spring area. Jiang Yuqing returned to the palace with Shangguan. However, Shangguan wasn't willing to face anyone with that face. Jiang Yuqing was also very tactful. After saying a few words, he left Huayang Palace. After that, he went straight to Qingfeng Palace. After leaving for so long, what he cared about the most was Her Majesty's current situation. When he arrived at Qingfeng Palace, the security was still tight. Seeing him arrive, the palace servants bowed in unison. Greetings, Prince Consort. The wedding date of Jiang Yuqing and Shangguan had been set. That was what the palace called it. Jiang Yuqing nodded and asked as he walked in. As he walked in, he asked, Has Her Majesty shown any signs of waking up during this period of time? The palace servants shook their heads. This was originally within Jiang Yuqing's expectations, but he was still somewhat disappointed when he heard it. Everything was done cautiously and cautiously. Even if he had poisoned her too much back then, she should have woken up after such a long period of recuperation. However, there was no change in Her Majesty. This made him even more irritable. Just as Jiang Yuqing was about to go in and take a look in person, the palace servants outside reported that everyone had arrived one after another and asked him to go over. In desperation, Jiang Yuqing could only withdraw his hand that was about to push the door open. After telling everyone to take good care of Her Majesty, he turned around and left. Qingfeng Palace regained its peace again. In the room, Shangguan, who had been in a coma for a long time, moved his fingers gently. Minghua Palace. The leaders of several major sects gathered here again. In addition, the masters of the aristocratic families in Xiling City were basically all here. Everyone was divided into two sides, greeting each other politely, but they all had their own thoughts in their hearts. Such a battle formation could not be said to be small. Shangguan and Jiang Yuqing had not appeared. In the main hall, discussions gradually arose. Her Highness the Third Princess suddenly brought people back from the Dahuang Swamp and gathered so many people. It seems that something really happened. I heard that there were heavy casualties in this trip to the Dahuang Swamp. Nearly 400 people of the Black Cavalry alone died. That's not all. The disciples of all the major sects also suffered injuries. Didn't you see how awful Song Wan of the Purple Shao Sword sect looked? 10 of them went this time and only 3 came back alive. This should be the most miserable family, right? Although everyone lowered their voices, everyone present was basically a top-notch powerhouse. How could they not hear it? Song Wan had indeed heard the news long ago. Until now he had not calmed down. He sat in his seat with a livid expression. His fists were clenched tightly, and the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. However, he forced himself to endure it. Because those who could come here had high statuses. Unless he had no choice, he was also unwilling to offend anyone. Right at this moment, the announcement sounded again. The pavilion master of the Chongshu Pavilion has arrived. The hall instantly quieted down. Everyone looked over at the same time with different expressions on their faces. They were the most well-informed people in Shilling City and naturally knew that none of the 3 disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion had returned. This basically meant that they all died in the Dahuang Swamp. Not long ago, the Chongshu Pavilion was still in the limelight and held on to the name of the 4 major sections. Everyone thought that by relying on Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou, the Chongshu Pavilion situation would gradually improve. They did not expect that all of them would be gone after just one trip to the Dahuang Swamp. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to the Chongshu Pavilion. However, out of everyone's expectations, Yu Qisong's expression was very calm, as if he did not feel any pain from losing his disciples. Under everyone's gazes, Wei Qisong walked straight in. After a simple greeting, he sat down in his seat. Seeing him so calm and composed, everyone did not know how to react for a moment. Could it be that he still doesn't know what happened? Song Wan was in a bad mood and couldn't help but speak up in a strange tone. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, I heard that the 3 disciples of your pavilion who went to the Dahuang Swamp did not return? You have to restrain your grief. The moment he finished speaking, the entire atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Yu Qisong looked up and glanced at Song Wan calmly and coldly. What? Do you want to cry at the grave? Digression. Here is a February who has insomnia and is about to faint from hunger. Writing words is really an individual effort. 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 777. This sentence nearly made Song Wan choke to death. His face turned pale, then green and then red. His expression changed very excitedly. He suddenly stood up and said angrily, "What did you say?" He was originally very frustrated and depressed. How could he control himself after hearing this sentence? It was as if he was ignited by fire. He exploded. However, Yu Qisong's expression was indifferent. Everyone present should have heard what I said clearly. Why are you the only one who didn't hear it clearly? Is there something wrong with your ears? It seems like your ears are just like your mouth. They're just decorations. It's fine if you don't want them. Yu Qisong scolded Song Wan until he was black and blue all over with just a few words. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yu Qisong had always been a person of virtue and prestige. His speech and actions had always been very low-key. And ever since Chongshu Pavilion suffered consecutive blows more than a year ago, it was needless to say. The entire Chongshu Pavilion seemed to have become transparent. Precisely because of this, many people gradually stopped taking Chongshu Pavilion seriously. They originally thought that this time, the deaths of Chu Luiyue and the other 2 would be a huge blow to Yu Qisong and the others. Some even suspected that he wouldn't come to the palace at all. They didn't expect that not only did he come, but he was also so domineering. How many people in the entire Shilling City dared to speak to Song Wan like this? Many people exchanged glances and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Could it be that he suffered too much of a shock? Yu Qisong sat in his seat and allowed countless gazes to size him up. He remained as still as a mountain. Would he not know if his own disciple was dead or alive? Those 3 children just didn't come back with Shangguan Wan and the others, but he knew clearly that they were still fine. However, he didn't intend to publicize this news now. On the way here, he knew that someone would definitely use this to create trouble for their Chongshu Pavilion. If it was anything else, he would just turn a blind eye and be too lazy to fuss over it. However, Song Wan was talking about those 3 children and even cursed them to die. How could he tolerate it? Song Wan was dumbfounded. In his memory, Yu Qisong had never been so rude to anyone. He was so angry that he laughed and sneered. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, we're all part of the 4 great sects. I'm merely expressing my concern. Aren't your words a little too much? Yuchi-song glanced at him as if he was watching a joke. I heard that 7 outstanding disciples of the Purple Shao Sword sect died this time. I didn't expect that sect leader Song would still be in the mood to care about our Chongshu pavilion. Song Wan's heart immediately choked up and he couldn't speak. They had indeed lost 7 disciples. Among the remaining 3, other than his own son, Song Qingyin, who was in relatively good condition, the other 2 were severely injured. It was very likely that it would affect their future cultivation. It could be said that they were completely wiped out. One had to know that the people sent to the Great Desolate Swamp this time were all the most outstanding disciples of their Purple Shao Sword sect. As a result, they would have to spend another 2 to 3 years to repair the damage. At this moment, Jian Shai suddenly spoke. I heard that Chu Liwei helped save many people in the Mystic Forest. Not only our Dragon Teeth Mountain disciples, but the other sects also more or less received her help, right? As he spoke, he looked at Song Wan and deliberately asked. Song Wan, it seems that your precious son was also saved by them? Song Wan immediately retorted. Impossible. There's no such thing at all. Jian Shai was shocked as he looked at the people beside him. Oh, I wonder if anyone here has heard of this matter? The entire hall fell into an eerie silence. Everyone had different expressions. Song Wan sneered. I know that Chu Liwei has some capabilities, but with her abilities, it's probably difficult for her to even protect herself, let alone help others. And she even helped so much? Jian Shai, what you're saying is too outrageous. After a moment, someone suddenly spoke. Dragon Teeth Mountain Master is right. Our sect's disciples were indeed saved by Chu Liwei and the others. Song Wan immediately looked over with a frown and realized that the person speaking was the Palace Master of Holy Flame Palace. He sneered and was about to mock him when someone spoke again. Our Heavenly Secrets Residence's disciples did mention this when they returned. Song Wan's expression froze. It was fine if Jian Shai said that alone, but everyone actually admitted it one after another? The other sects were all silent, obviously not intending to refute. This made the patriarchs of the various aristocratic families sitting across from him shocked. As they didn't participate in this matter much, they didn't know much. Previously, they only thought that there were heavy casualties in Dahuang Swamp and didn't expect there to be such a thing inside. Jian Shai touched his chin and broke the silence. Song Wan, it seems like your precious son didn't tell you on purpose? Then he probably didn't say that Yang Qin in your sect chose to self-destruct because she was found to be problematic, right? I heard that she almost harmed many people back then. Song Wan suddenly looked up with a shocked expression. He really didn't know. After Song Qingyin and the 2 disciples returned, he rushed over to take a look at them immediately. The 2 seriously injured disciples were quickly sent for treatment. Song Qingyin didn't say much and only said that he was very tired, so he went to rest. Song Wan's heart ached and only cared about being thankful that his son was still alive. How could he care about anything else? He quickly reacted and said sternly, Dragon Teeth Mountain Lord, you can't spout nonsense. Right at this time, a voice suddenly sounded from outside the hall. What he said previously was indeed true. Everyone looked back and saw that it was Jiang Yuqing. No one reported it and they didn't know how long he had been listening outside. Jiang Yuqing walked into the hall and everyone kept quiet. Song Wan became nervous. Jiang Yuqing was present and had a special identity. If he said that, he hurriedly restrained his expression. After Qingyin came back he was in low spirits so I let him rest. I didn't know much about it. Jiang Yuqing shook his head lightly. Actually he didn't take this to heart at all. His attention was mostly on Yuchi-song. Before he came he happened to see Yuchi-song enter first and then heard Song Wan's provocation. Thus he decided to listen outside for a while. What made him feel strange was that Yuchi-song seemed to know that Chu Liwei and the rest hadn't returned yet, but he didn't seem to be very sad. It was fine for Chang Wanzhou and the rest. Yuchi-song might know that they were just looking for someone in the Mystic Forest. But Chu Liwei, she was dead. Yuchi-song shouldn't have such a reaction. Prince Consort. This anxious shout attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked up in unison. They saw a figure quickly walking over from outside the hall. Jiang Yuqing frowned. It was Chani. Why didn't Shangguan Wan come? He walked over but before he could say anything he heard Chani say, Prince Consort, the 3rd princess has something on at the last minute. Please go to Huayang Hall first. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 778. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Everyone present had been gathered by Shangguan. Now that everyone was here, she didn't come. Instead, she wanted to call Jiang Yuqing over. What was going on? Something came up at the last minute? What could it be for her to abandon everyone here and invite Jiang Yuqing alone? Even if he was the prince consort and had an extraordinary status, this didn't seem appropriate, right? Everyone present was an important figure in the Tianling dynasty. Everyone looked at each other. Their expressions weren't very good. Jiang Yuqing was also very surprised. He frowned inwardly. No matter how impudent Shangguan was, she wouldn't dare to act recklessly at this time. None of the people here could be easily offended. Even His Majesty had to be polite to these people, let alone third Princess Shangguan. If she hadn't gone crazy, then something important had really happened. He glanced at Chani and found that although Chani had her eyes lowered, her face was very tense. There was some anxiety in her eyes. His heart sank and he turned to look at everyone. Please wait for a moment. We'll be back soon. Although everyone was dissatisfied, they wouldn't show it on their faces. They all told him to go quickly. Jiang Yuqing knew that he had offended them this time. However, the situation was urgent and there was nothing he could do. He turned and walked in the direction of Huayang Palace. Chani quickly followed. After the two of them left, the palace fell silent again. No one said anything, but they were more or less dissatisfied. Shangguan hadn't officially ascended the throne yet, but she was already so bold. She made so many people wait for her. When the time was up, she still didn't appear. Instead, she called Jiang Yuqing away, leaving everyone here. Before this, whether it was His Majesty or the princess, they had never done such an inappropriate thing. The people from the aristocratic families were fine, but the people from the sects were especially unhappy. Their families had suffered heavy losses in the Dahuang swamp trip. They wanted to ask Shangguan for an explanation. Who would have thought that she wouldn't even show her face now? A cold and solemn atmosphere spread in the palace. Jiang Yuqing and Chani traveled quickly. When they arrived at Huayang Palace, they discovered that the palace was already heavily guarded. He felt more and more uneasy as he walked toward the main hall. When she reached the door, Chani stopped. Prince Consort, the third princess, said that only you can enter. Jiang Yuqing nodded, a little upset. He pushed the door open and walked in. The moment he entered, Chani closed the door behind him. Jiang Yuqing's expression turned serious. What exactly happened that made Huayang Palace so vigilant? What? He called out, but no one answered. He looked around but didn't see Shangguan. Instead, he saw a broken box of cream beside the bronze mirror. He paused for a moment before continuing to walk inside. If it wasn't here, then it should be in the hot spring inside. Just as he walked to the door, he was hesitating whether to go in and look for her when he heard a painful groan coming from inside. It was weak and oppressive, and it also carried a trace of deep fear. It was Shangguan. Jiang Yuqing didn't stay any longer as he directly pushed the door open and walked in. The moment he walked in, a hot and humid steam surged toward him. This was a gigantic hot spring. Smoke surrounded it and he couldn't see anyone clearly. However, Jiang Yuqing had been here before, so he knew where it was. Amidst the blurry steam, he could vaguely see a figure beside the hot spring. What's wrong? He walked toward that person. But the moment he got close, he smelled a strong bloody smell. More importantly, there was a hint of rotting smell in this bloody stench. Jiang Yuqing couldn't be more familiar with this smell. Isn't this the strange smell in the mystic forest? This smell was nauseating. Jiang Yuqing suppressed his disgust and walked forward. Shangguan was wearing 2 layers of unlined clothing as she lay at the edge of the hot spring. Her hands were tightly clawing the ground. Hearing Jiang Yuqing's voice, she moved with much difficulty and spoke. Yuqing? Her voice was hoarse and her breathing was weak. Jiang Yuqing went forward and carefully held her shoulders. Why are you lying here? Everyone is waiting for you. His voice stopped abruptly. This was because there was actually a pool of blood in the hot spring nearby. Wretch. Shangguan's body trembled and she vomited blood again. But this wasn't what shocked Jiang Yuqing the most. He swept his gaze across and shockingly discovered that Shangguan's exposed arm had actually become much thinner. I just didn't see her for half a day, but her arm has actually become so skinny. There's clearly a problem. He was very shocked and was about to ask when he saw a faint dark green light flowing under her skin. It was very strange. That light? Isn't that light exactly the same as the one I saw in the mystic forest? What's going on with your body? Asked Jiang Yuqing anxiously. It's no wonder Shangguan hurriedly called me over. This kind of situation was really too strange. Shangguan grabbed his hand and started crying in despair. I don't know either. At first she just wanted to wash up, but not long later she realized that something was wrong with her body. That dark green light was flowing all over her body, and her body started to become thinner at a visible speed. It was as if her muscles, bones and flesh were all being swallowed by this thing. Shangguan had never seen such a situation before, and she was scared to death at that time. Seeing that things were going out of control, she could only get Chan Yi to call Jiang Yuqing over. Yuqing, you have to save me. You must save me. Shangguan hugged his arm and cried in pain and panic as she begged non-stop. Jiang Yuqing's pupils constricted. The current Shangguan's appearance was completely ruined, and her body was also very skinny. He felt very uncomfortable hugging her, and she looked neither human nor ghost. If it weren't for his strong mental fortitude, he really couldn't help but fling her away. The spot where Shangguan hugged him tightly seemed to have lice, and it was very itchy and uncomfortable. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath in before asking, "Did you make use of that mother tree in the mystic forest?" Mystic forest. It was silent in the dark space. Chu Liyue's force surrounded him, and he was clearly stronger than before. After digesting the swallowing force again, Chu Liyue slowly opened his eyes. His gaze became even brighter and brighter, and his body became much lighter. His entire body seemed to be filled with abundant energy. Taizu couldn't help but praise him. Luyu, hang in there for a while longer, and you should be able to successfully break through to peak stage 5. Chu Liyue smiled brightly, then looked opposite him and squinted his eyes. A dark green light appeared out of nowhere and surged toward the Tian baby. Chu Liyue teased him. Where did you get such mottled energy from? You want this too? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 779. That ball of green light stopped in front of the Tian baby. For a moment it was very awkward. The corners of Chu Liyue's lips curled up slightly, and a sly light flashed in his eyes. This was the Tian baby's divine realm, and everything was under its control. From previous experience, it was obvious that it could absorb energy from the outside. The mystic forest's energy had been exhausted, and there was still the Red Moon Desert and Mirror Lake next to it. The energy contained in these two places was much more than that in the mystic forest. If it persisted and continued to absorb energy from the outside world at a speed faster than Chu Liyue's absorption and digestion speed, then it would be very disadvantageous for Chu Liyue. Moreover, this ball of energy looked really mottled and messy. Chu Liyue didn't like it and would rather not have it. It would be a waste for it to be paired with the Tian baby. Taizu coughed. There were probably not many people who dared to talk to the Tian baby like that. Originally, that energy was taken by the Tian baby, and there was nothing wrong with using it. However, after Chu Liyue said that, it seemed to have become cheap. Even he felt that it was a little strange. Sure enough, after a short silence, the ball of light dissipated with a bang. Chu Liyue nodded in satisfaction. That's more like it. Taizu's mouth twitched. Sensing the dangerous aura emitted by the Tian baby, Taizu was very worried. This lass is really relying on that water curtain to do whatever she wants. Chu Liyue didn't take this to heart and turned to look at the hourglass. It seemed that a few months had passed. For the people outside, it was actually only a few days. I wonder how Hongyu and Xiaozhou are doing. I've been trapped here, so I have no way to contact them. Thinking about it, they must be very worried. If only someone could help me pass a message. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue suddenly remembered the voices she heard before. One of them even called out her name clearly. If those people could help. Chu Liyue looked up. It was pitch black. He couldn't see or hear anything. Those voices hadn't appeared for a long time. She retracted her gaze regretfully as a trace of doubt flashed through her mind. She didn't remember knowing such people, but they seemed to be very familiar with her. She pursed her lips slightly. She vaguely felt that she had forgotten something. But she didn't even know what stage of memory she had forgotten. This was because there was no missing time in her mind. As far as she was concerned, her memory was complete. This caused a ripple in her heart. Also, who was that black-clothed man on the cliff? Red Moon Desert. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, almost blinding people. The sand was boiling hot as if it had been roasted by charcoal. Heat waves surged and the nearby void was slightly distorted due to the heat. There was no wind in the surroundings at all. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that such a place could roast people into jerky. In the vast and boundless desert, there was not a single person. However, on the undulating sand dunes, there was a muscular figure that was quickly passing by. Whoosh-whoosh-whoosh. If someone looked down from above, they would be able to see that the sand dunes in the Red Moon Desert were arranged according to a certain pattern. And as time passed, these sand dunes were also silently changing. It was as if an invisible hand was controlling everything, changing the position of these sand dunes at will. And Shwe was running back and forth at the top of these sand dunes. According to that person's instructions, it had to run continuously here, and it could only land at the top of the sand dunes every time, leaving at most 2 paw prints. This matter seemed simple, but in reality, it consumed a lot of energy and strength. This was because the vast Red Moon Desert was under the control of the other party. In the past few days, Shwe had run around the entire Red Moon Desert several times. Its originally snow-white fur was also stained with a layer of yellow sand, turning into a dirty yellowish-white color. After running for a long time, Shwe's strength was almost exhausted. It raised its head to take a look. There were no clouds in the sky and the sun was shining brightly. And there were sand dunes that kept appearing in front of it. Even a divine beast couldn't withstand such torment. "You're too slow." A baby-like voice suddenly sounded in its ears. Shwe was shocked and forced to speed up again. It had no choice. Although those people could only come out during the night of the Red Moon Desert, it was still easy for them to monitor it. Shwe's heart was bitter. For the 10,000th time, it regretted signing a contract with Rongxiu. For the 10,000th time, it fantasized about running away from home. Once it was done with the punishment here, it would definitely not go back. It wanted to follow Chu Liyue. Sob, 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 I missed that warm embrace. Shwe accepted its fate and ran forward. Dabeo, aren't you too cruel? Look at how tired little Shwe is. His fine fur was about to turn into withered grass. Tsk. Lan Zhan said with some disdain. If you want to say who's wrong, it's Rongxiu. Why are you venting your anger on little Shwe? Dugu Mabao sneered coldly. Can't you guess why Rongxiu sent it here himself? If we don't teach it a lesson, Rongxiu will think that we're easy to bully. Lan Zhan thought for a moment. Anyway, don't let Rongxiu off just because you tortured little Shwe. When the time comes, you can deal with it however you want. As long as little Shwe didn't make up for it. Diwu Zhangzi said slowly, you just don't like Rongxiu, right? When he comes, can't you do it yourself? Lan Zhan sighed. Do you think I'm stupid? If I touch Rongxiu, will the girl let me go if she knows? I'm different from Dabeo. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. It doesn't matter if I'm mute or not. The main thing is to look good. Dugu Mabao forcibly suppressed its anger. Such a big thing happened to the girl. Rongxiu knew about it and didn't report it. It's his fault. Moreover, that divine beast by his side was almost spoiled by him. Do you really think he sent it here just to ask for forgiveness? This kid wants me to help him tame the beast. Rongxiu, who had just walked out of the hall, sneezed again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 780. Tianling Palace. Huayang Palace. Shangguan leaned into Jiang Yuqing's arms and tightly gripped his arm as if she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. Yuqing, help me. Help me. Only you can help me, she kept spitting out blood and her voice was hoarse and hopeless. She looked like a wretched ghost. Jiang Yuqing had never seen Shangguan like this. He suppressed the disgust in his heart and tried to push her away a little. But Shangguan hugged him very tightly and he couldn't ignore her. Jiang Yuqing was worried that if he overdid it, it would cause a huge shock to her, so he could only hold it in. He looked at the light flowing under Shangguan's skin and knitted his brows tightly. What exactly did you provoke? He originally thought that after Shangguan hid underground, she personally took action against those people. But he didn't expect her to use those tree roots. Thinking of Yang Qiner, who chose to self-destruct previously and had a rotten and bloody aura on her, his face turned cold. You attacked Yang Qiner previously, didn't you? Shangguan felt very guilty and shifted her gaze. I only borrowed a little of her strength. But I also don't know what those tree roots are. To Jiang Yuqing, Shangguan was really too stupid to treat Yang Qiner in Xiling City. So many eyes are watching her openly and secretly. Once someone finds out, she can't even keep her status as the third princess, let alone the throne. But now that Yang Qiner is already dead, there's no point in pursuing this. Once outsiders see Shangguan's current appearance, they will definitely think of Yang Qin back then. So no matter what, I have to think of a way to solve Shang Wanwan's problem. Jiang Yuqing held his breath and looked at Shang Wanwan solemnly. Sit up first and give me your hand. When Shang Wanwan heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. She quickly struggled to sit up in his arms and reached out her hand. Jiang Yuqing glanced at it and saw a hand as thin as a skeleton. It was stained with messy blood stains, which made him nauseous. Jiang Yuqing forced himself to restrain himself. He stretched out his hand and slowly placed it against Shang Wanwan's as origin power surged around him. Gradually, there seemed to be a layer of black mist spreading out from his eyes, gradually dyeing them black. Even the scare of his eyes had turned black. At first glance they looked like two dark holes. It was a little horrifying. A stream of origin power slowly entered Shang Wanwan's body. More than half of her Yuan meridian had been repaired, so the transition of origin power could be considered smooth. At this moment, the dark green light had already flowed to her shoulder. Jiang Yuqing controlled his own power and approached bit by bit. A trace of pain appeared on Shang Wanwan's face. Wherever Jiang Yuqing's power passed, it was as if it was being forcefully cut by a knife. If there were outsiders present at this moment, they would be shocked to discover that the aura of the origin power that Jiang Yuqing had sent out was clearly stronger than his current realm. Logically speaking, this was definitely not a power that he could use by himself. However, Shang Wanwan seemed to have already known this. She was not the least bit surprised by this. Instead, she forcefully endured the pain. When that power slowly approached Shang Wanwan's shoulder and was about to clash with the dark green light, the latter suddenly exploded. Bang! Following the explosion, Shang Wanwan's body shook, and flesh and blood splattered from her shoulder. Ah! She was momentarily caught off guard and was shocked by this sudden change. Fear and panic instantly surged into her heart. After a short moment of being stunned, the intense pain spread. Shang Wanwan was in so much pain that her face turned pale, and she almost fainted. Jiang Yuqing, who was nearby, was also shocked. This explosion happened too suddenly, so much so that he did not even have time to react or dodge before he was directly knocked down by the tyrannical and violent airflow. His chest shook, and a strong smell of blood surged up between his lips and teeth. However, he did not have time to care about his injuries and immediately looked up. Shang Wanwan fell to the ground. Her left shoulder had completely festered and turned into a bloody mess. If it had been a little more to the side, her entire arm would probably have been broken. As for that dark green light, it had already dissipated without a trace. Jiang Yuqing was still in shock and his heart was beating crazily. Just now, what exactly happened? Shang Wanwan's painful moans pulled Jiang Yuqing back from his thoughts. He suppressed the surging blood in his chest and walked toward Shang Wanwan. Shang Wanwan was lying on the ground, covered in blood. However, some of the energy that had been devoured earlier seemed to have returned. Her body, which was originally so thin that only bones were left, was gradually recovering. Although she still looked a lot thinner than before, it was still much better than her skeleton-like appearance. Shang Wanwan's mind was blank. Looking at Jiang Yuqing, who appeared in front of her, she opened her mouth but could not speak. Jiang Yuqing frowned. With Shang Wanwan like this, it was impossible for her to go out and meet anyone. There were still so many people waiting in Minghua Palace, and they could not afford to waste time. He took out a jade bottle and poured out 2 pills. One was for himself and the other was for Shang Wanwan. This is to regulate your blood and qi and nourish your body. Take it first. Also, according to your current condition, you can't go to Minghua Palace anymore. Later, let Chani come in to take care of you. Also, send Zhuo Mingxi into the palace to check on your injuries. You must not leave any problems. Shang Wanwan opened her mouth and looked at him with a sorrowful gaze. I will handle Minghua Palace. Tell the public that you were injured while getting medicine for His Majesty and need to recuperate. In a short period of time, Jiang Yuqing had already made his decision. Shang Wanwan wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she nodded with difficulty to express her agreement. She also understood that this was the only way in the current situation. Then Jiang Yuqing turned and left. Shang Wanwan closed her eyes in despair and resentment. She could clearly feel that more than half of the strength that she had accumulated with great difficulty had been used up after this torture. She just wanted to repair her Yuan meridian and become an expert again. Why was it so difficult? That light, what was going on? After Jiang Yuqing handed Shang Wanwan to Chani, he returned to Minghua Palace. Everyone thought that Shang Wanwan would come with Jiang Yuqing this time, but in the end, they only saw Jiang Yuqing alone. They could not help but look at each other with doubtful expressions. Jiang Yuqing walked in front of everyone with a trace of worry and concern. I'm afraid the third princess won't be able to come today. She was injured while getting medicine for His Majesty. Now she has to rest in bed for a few days. Please forgive her. After a short period of silence, Jian Shai asked, what kind of medicine is it that the third princess risked her life to get it? Jiang Yuqing paused. Dancing Lotus. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.